Some days arrive like a storm you never see coming, pressing down until it feels like you can't even breathe. For Ethan Callahan, a single father barely clinging to what little stability he had left this day, was that storm. His truck had given up on him in the middle of Route 9, coughing its last breath with a hiss of smoke. His bank account balance mocked him with $17.26 less than the cost of a family meal at the diner down the street. And if that wasn't enough, the voicemail blinking on his phone carried the sharp edge of his ex-wife Rebecca's voice, reminding him yet again that she was ready to drag their daughter Lily to Portland if he failed at being a real provider. One man, one child, one house falling apart around them. Follow my story to the very end, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story can travel. Ethan stood in his kitchen motionless, staring at the silent coffee maker as if it were personally mocking him. The faint, acrid smell of burnt wiring lingered from its death sometime during the night. A cheap machine bought at a garage sale 2 summers ago, now just another lifeless appliance in a house full of things barely hanging on. The linoleum under his work boots was worn thin. The once bright pattern faded into dull gray corners, peeling places rubbed raw to bare wood. He ran his hand over his tired face. 42, but the mirror told him a harsher number. Dad. The voice cut through the silence, sharp and impatient, yet still small in its own way. Lily, 12 years old, already full of opinions and questions that seemed to age her faster than she should. The shower's doing that noise again. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The pipes rattled like an angry ghost every time someone tried to use hot water. He'd promised for weeks to fix it. Promises came cheap, plumbers didn't. "I'll take a look after breakfast, sweetheart," he called back, though even his own ears caught the hollowness of the words. She appeared in the doorway, her dark hair a tangled mess, drowning inside the oversized flannel shirt that once belonged to her late mother, Claire. She tugged the sleeves down past her wrists, her eyes carrying a watchfulness no 12-year-old should have to carry. "There's no hot water again," she said flatly, dropping into the chair at the small wooden table. That chair had been Claire's. Sometimes Ethan still looked up, expecting to see her there, hair pinned back for work, coffee cup in hand, smiling in that gentle way she had. Cold showers build character. Ethan tried to joke, forcing a grin that didn't reach his tired eyes. He opened the refrigerator door. The shelves were as bare as he felt milk that would expire tomorrow, a limp bag of shredded cheese, half a carton of bologna with edges turning gray. On the top shelf, a takeout box with a single slice of congealed pizza left from 2 nights ago. "How about cereal?" Lily wrinkled her nose. "We're out of the good kind. Only the cheap stuff left." That word cheap wasn't meant cruelly. It was simply fact. Even at 12, Lily had already learned to measure her world in terms of what they could and couldn't afford. Ethan poured the last of the milk into her bowl of generic cornflakes, leaving just enough to stir into his own mug of instant coffee powder. She pushed the flakes around with her spoon, making them last, her small shoulders set in determination. "Dad." She began carefully, eyes on the bowl. "Mrs. Henderson wants to see you after school today." His chest tightened. Mrs. Henderson, guidance counselor at Cedar Ridge Middle School. And guidance counselors rarely called for good news. "What about Lily?" Hesitated. "The scholarship thing. For the advanced program." The words cut deeper than she knew. The program a golden ticket. Claire's dream for their daughter. Accelerated learning college prep, a chance to break the small-town cycle. And all it required was $800 per semester. 800 that might as well have been 8,000. "We'll figure it out," Ethan said, because that was all he ever said. Lily's face softened at the mention of her mother. "Mom always said I got my brains from you." He reached over and ruffled her hair. "She was generous with the truth, your mom." They ate the rest of breakfast in silence, Lily buried in a borrowed library book on marine biology. Ethan watched her, the same stubborn jaw as Claire, the same fierce spark in her eyes. His heart swelled with pride, then collapsed under the weight of fear. She deserved the world, and all he had to offer was a house, where the shower moaned and the fridge mocked them. When she left for school, backpack almost bigger than she was, Ethan lingered in the empty kitchen. He stared at the folded scholarship letter on the counter edges, creased from being opened and closed too many times. Acceptance, but meaningless without the money. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it, desperate for work. Hope died when he saw the message, Rebecca. Emma's scholarship meeting today. Don't screw this up like everything else. Call me. Ethan's stomach knotted. Even 3 years divorced, her words still cut him down to size, back to the boy who always felt one step behind. Their marriage had lasted 18 months after Claire's funeral. 18 months of grief welded to anger until the bond broke. Rebecca had the money, the city job, the granite countertops. She also had the means to take Lily if he slipped. The meeting felt like a test, one more chance for him to fail. He stepped outside, boots crunching gravel, toward his old pickup, his only lifeline. A 1999 Ford Rust eating away more than paint, the engine coughing on borrowed time. He slid behind the wheel, whispered a prayer, turned the key. Nothing. Again, metal grinding, heart sinking. Third try, an ugly cough. Then silence. Not today, he muttered. Please, not today. But today was exactly the kind of day it would happen. He popped the hood, stared into the tangle of wires and pipes, as if sheer will could resurrect it. He knew enough about engines to know this one was past saving. A mechanic would cost money. Money he didn't have. His phone rang. Bill Morrison, his old boss. Relief surged. Maybe a job, maybe hope. Ethan. Listen. Bill's voice carried hesitation. The Hillcrest project's been canceled. Financing fell through. I'm sorry. 3 weeks of promised steady work gone like smoke. Enough to cover the scholarship, the truck repair evaporated. Ethan stood there in his driveway, phone limp in his hand, staring at the quiet street he'd lived on most of his adult life. Cedar Ridge, small town, small dreams. The kind of place young people left and old people clung to. The kind of place Lily deserved to outgrow. He sat heavily on the porch steps, head in his hands. $800 might as well have been $8 million. His chest ached under the weight of failure, and the clock ticked closer to 3 o'clock, the scholarship meeting. He needed air. He needed space from the sagging roof. The silent truck, the letter that felt more like a taunt. The forest behind the neighborhood called to him the same trails he'd walked as a boy, the same paths where he'd held Claire's hand and dreamed of a future brighter than this. He locked the door and started walking, boots crunching through fallen leaves. October air sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. The trees stood tall, gold and crimson leaves glowing like stained glass against a pale sky. Somewhere in that vast quiet, he hoped to find a moment of peace, maybe even an answer. But what he found instead would change everything. The forest swallowed Ethan whole within minutes. The air was sharper here, cooler, scented with pine needles and damp soil. His boots sank softly into the layer of leaves carpeting the trail, each step crunching with a muted finality, like the closing of a door. He had always come here when life became too heavy. As a boy, he pretended to be a pioneer, hunting and tracking, imagining that survival was a game he controlled. As a young man, he had walked hand in hand with Claire through these very trees, their laughter echoing between trunks, both of them imagining futures as wide as the horizon. Now at 42, with his wife gone, his daughter depending on him and his world collapsing, the forest felt less like a refuge and more like a confessional. Each tree seemed to listen, bearing witness to his quiet failures. He walked faster, breath visible in the crisp October air. The silence here was different than the silence in his house. At home, silence pressed in like judgment, the hum of broken appliances, the reminder of absence. Here it was alive. Wind whispered through branches. A woodpecker's hollow rhythm echoed from somewhere unseen. Each sound layered over the next until it felt like the woods itself was breathing alongside him. And then something wrong. A rustling sound above him, sharp and frantic. Not the natural rhythm of leaves or animals. This was heavier, clumsy, accompanied by muffled swearing. He froze, tilting his head, eyes scanning the canopy. The rustling grew louder, punctuated by a thud. Then a distinctly human voice. Damn it! Damn this stupid branch! Ethan squinted through the leaves. And then he saw her. Dangling upside down from a thick oak branch 15 feet overhead was a woman in a tailored charcoal gray business suit. Her jacket had snagged in the smaller branches, holding her like some expensive ornament hung by mistake. One sleek black heel was missing, the other still clung to her foot at a painful angle. Her long dark hair streamed downward, hiding part of her face, but what he could see was flushed with furious indignation. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, dumbstruck. In all his years wandering these woods, he'd never come across anything remotely like this. She looked as if she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine and been dropped literally into his world of dirt and bark and leaf litter. "Excuse me," Ethan finally called up, voice hesitant. "You all right up there?" The thrashing stopped. Slowly, the woman's head tilted, upside-down eyes glaring through the curtain of hair. "Do I look all right?" She snapped words, clipped crisp, practiced in authority. "I'm hanging from a tree like some kind of Christmas ornament." Despite everything, his broken truck, the scholarship, the sinking weight of his failures, Ethan felt a laugh tug at the edges of his mouth. The absurdity of it, the sheer ridiculousness of the situation cracked through his despair. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "Fair point." "Don't just stand there," she barked. "Help me down." He took a few steps closer, scanning the tree trunk. The oak was old, solid branches spaced like a ladder. He could climb it, he thought. He'd climbed trees his whole life, but the sight of her wrapped in fabric worth more than his mortgage dangling helplessly stirred something between pity and curiosity. "How exactly did you end up there?" he asked, setting his jacket down at the base of the tree. The woman groaned, half with frustration, half with shame. "Corporate team building. Some genius thought it would be character building to do a ropes course out here in the middle of nowhere. My harness broke, I fell backwards, and now I'm stuck here explaining my humiliation to a complete stranger." Ethan's grin slipped wider. "When you put it that way, it almost sounds reasonable." She glared down at him upside down and furious. "Are you going to help me or just stand there making jokes? I'm going to help." He spat into his palms, looking for handholds. "But fair warning, I'm not exactly a professional rescue worker. At this point, I'll take amateur. I'll even take someone who just plays one on television." The oak's bark bit into his palms as he hauled himself upward. His body still remembered the motions from childhood, hands-feet pull balance. In seconds, he was near her level enough to see the panic beneath her practiced scowl. "What's your name?" he asked, bracing himself on a branch. She hesitated, as though the words themselves carried weight. "Victoria. Victoria Hale." Her chin lifted with the kind of pride that suggested the name should mean something. Ethan blinked. "Should I know who you are?" Her eyes widened, surprised. "You really don't—" "Sorry, I don't keep up with celebrity news. I'm not a celebrity," she snapped. "I'm a CEO. Hale Technologies. We went public last month." "Congratulations," Ethan muttered, working carefully at the fabric of her jacket tangled in branches. "I'm Ethan Callahan. I live about half a mile from here." "Ethan Callahan." She repeated the name as if testing its shape. "And what do you do, Ethan Callahan, who lives half a mile from here?" "Construction. When there's work to find." He freed one of her sleeves from the tight clutch of twigs. She let out a long breath. "How much longer?" she asked, voice strained. "I'm starting to see spots." "Almost there." He worked methodically, mindful not to rip the expensive material. Finally, the last strand snapped free. "Okay," Ethan said, steadying himself. "I'm going to grab your ankles. Can you pull yourself upright?" She grimaced. "I think so." Victoria braced her hands against the thick branch above her, gritting her teeth as she flipped herself right side up. Now she straddled the branch awkwardly, hair disheveled, stockings torn, breathing hard. "That's better," she muttered, pushing strands of hair from her face. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, the kind that could slice through boardroom lies, met his for the first time without obstruction. "Now what?" "Now we get you down to the ground." Ethan descended first boots, finding solid purchase. He stood below, arms crossed. "It's not far. Just use the branches like a ladder. I'll spot you." Victoria glanced down, skepticism radiating from every inch of her. "You want me to climb?" "I don't climb trees. I haven't climbed a tree since I was 8. "Well," Ethan said, folding his arms, "today's a good day to remember how." Their eyes locked hers, burning with indignation, his steady calm. Finally, with a groan of disgust, she began her descent inch by inch. Ethan guided her, calling out footholds, steadying her when she slipped. At last, she dropped the final 3 feet into his waiting arms, before quickly pushing away to land on her own. She collapsed onto a fallen log, checking the run in her stockings, muttering curses under her breath. that she announced was terrifying. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head at the sight of this billion-dollar woman, leaves tangled in her hair, glaring at the forest as though it had personally betrayed her. And deep down beneath the absurdity, he had the strangest feeling his life was about to change forever. For a long heartbeat, they just stood there, both of them breathing hard, the forest holding its breath with them. Then, as if embarrassed by the intimacy of having fallen into his arms, Victoria straightened her jacket. Leaf bits clinging like confetti and put a few haughty inches of air back between them. "Thank you," she said. Tone clipped as if gratitude had to muscle past pride to reach daylight. Anytime Ethan answered and meant it, though he wasn't sure why. A flash in the leaves caught his eye. He crouched and lifted a sleek rectangle. The screen was an intricate spiderweb of glass, the metal frame dented at one corner. "This yours." Victoria's breath snagged. "Oh no. No, no." She took the phone, pressed the side button with a trembling thumb, waited. Nothing. She pressed harder as if force could resurrect it. Still nothing. "That device had my life on it," she whispered. "Board decks. Calendar. Flight confirmations. And the Sintra merger notes." She trailed off, eyes widening in fresh panic. "I can't even call Marcus." "Marcus?" "My assistant. He speaks Victoria better than I do." Ethan fished his own phone from his back pocket, the case scuffed white at the corners. "Mine makes calls. Sometimes sends texts if the wind's right." She took it like a museum curator accepting a primitive artifact. "Does this have—" She squinted at the screen internet. "On Tuesdays," he said dryly. "And if you stand on a truck bed—" She held it aloft anyway, walking a small exasperated circle. No bars. The trees gave her nothing. "Where were you supposed to meet your group?" he asked. "Some lodge," she said, weary and irritated. 2 miles north, team-building exercise, which, incidentally, I'm currently failing. 2 miles we can do," he said. "If we start now." She glanced down at herself as if seeing the absurdity for the first time. One high-heel stockings laddered to the knee, a suit tailored to war rooms, not woods. Her barefoot, soft city pail was already nicked with a thin smear of blood. "You're not walking 2 miles in one heel," he said. "Take it off." "Excuse me." The heel was all that survived of her armor. The idea of relinquishing it seemed to terrify her. "You'll twist your ankle in 5 minutes. Barefoot's better than lopsided." "I'm not walking through a forest barefoot," she declared, as if the trees might apologize and roll out a carpet. "Then you're not walking through the forest at all." Their stares crashed and held. The birds kept talking overhead. Somewhere a branch popped in the wind. She lifted her chin. "It's a designer shoe. It's a bad hiking boot." For a second he saw her choose between image and outcome, between dignity and practicality. Her mouth flattened. She tugged the shoe free and held it like a dead bird. "Congratulations," Ethan said gently. "You just chose living over looking like you're living?" "That's a horrible slogan," she muttered, but the corner of her mouth twitched. He tugged off his socks, thick, worn warmer than they looked, and offered them across the small gulf. "These'll help. Not pretty. Useful." She stared at the socks as if they were a foreign language, then at his bare feet in their work boots. "What about you? I've had my share of blisters." She slid the socks on, wincing, then exhaled. "That's embarrassingly better." Ethan found her abandoned heel and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Souvenir. Or evidence. Evidence of what? That the forest always wins. He set off at a pace that respected her untrained stride, scanning for the old trail he half remembered. The light fell in soft bars through the canopy, every patch of sun turning floating dust into gold. The air smelled like clean water and sap, the kind of purity money tries to bottle and sell. Victoria limped beside him, determined not to show it. Within a dozen yards, practicality beat performance. "Is north that way?" she asked, pointing confidently into the kind of south a compass would laugh at. "Close," he said, tipping his head toward the slant of light. "But no. How can you tell without a compass?" He touched the trunk of a fir ruff under his palm. Light, slope, the way the moss builds where the shade lingers. He pointed through the trees where the land fell away in a shallow V. That wash leads to the old service road. The road runs toward the lodge. She followed his hand, reluctant admiration slipping past her guard. You read this place like I read a term sheet. Term sheets don't bite if you step wrong. You've never met our lawyers. They picked their way through a tangle of windfall. He reached back without thinking. Her fingers found his wrist for balance, cool and fine-boned, then let go fast, as if touch itself burned. You always this helpful to strangers, she asked, trying for flippant and landing closer to curious. When they're stuck in trees. And when they're not stuck in trees. He shrugged. Depends who they are when their feet hit the ground. She glanced at him sideways. And who am I still deciding? Silence stretched. It wasn't empty. It was full of all the things neither wanted to say. They crossed a shallow dip in the earth where rainwater braided after storms. The soil here was dark and soft. Ethan used a stick to score a simple arrow pointing back the way they'd come. Why the mark, she asked. In case we have to backtrack, forests are generous with choices. She let that sit for a few steps. We talk a lot about choice in my world, she said. Disruption, optionality, pivot points. Uh-huh. It sounds very smart on stage. How's it feel in real life? She laughed once, dry. Messy. A low branch stretched across the path like a lazy arm. Ethan ducked it. Victoria hesitated, eyeing its bark, as if it might stain her last intact sleeve. He lifted it higher with one palm. Come on. She eased under the crown of her head momentarily, inches from his chin. He caught a whiff of her perfume-clean citrus over something darker, and an unexpected ache rose in his throat, a memory of Claire's shampoo on Saturday mornings of domestic softness he'd trained himself not to need. He shook it off like rain. You said 2 miles, she said, pretending not to have noticed the shift in him. 2 miles we can do. How long is that, time-wise? Depends on your feet. An hour, maybe a bit more, in sunset. Little after 6, he said, glancing at the sky's pale slope. We've got time. Good. She blew out a breath. Because my calendar tomorrow starts at 5:30. Does it ever stop? Technically Sundays, she said. In reality, no. They came to a felled pine, its trunk thick as a sedan, the bark furred with lichen. The easiest way across was to clamber and drop on the far side. Ethan vaulted, boots thudding softly in the needles, then turned back, hands up. I can do it, she said, bristling. I know, he said, hands still there. She put her palms on the bark, hiked her skirt an inch with fierce practicality, and scrambled. For a second she wobbled on the spine of the log arms, windmilling. Ethan stepped in. Her hand caught his shoulder. His other hand found the small of her back, steadying. Warmth, tension. The strange awareness of another person's center of gravity. She hopped down, cleared her throat, looked anywhere but at him. Acceptable. Barely, he said, and it made her almost smile again. They walked. The forest shifted around them in subtle moods, breath of wind, brief hush, the distant complaint of a hawk. Victoria's gait found a rhythm in his. Where the ground grew mean, he slowed. Where it leveled, she pushed. Tell me about Lily, she said at last, the name careful on her tongue. The syllable filled his chest like light. She reads everything, asks questions that feel like exams, pretends not to be scared when she hears the pipes bang like a monster. How old? 12. 12 is a knife edge, she said softly, and something human moved behind her eyes. Too old for illusions, too young for armor. Yeah, he said. That's exactly it. And her mother? He didn't answer right away. The forest did with a ripple of leaves that sounded like an old song. Claire died 3 years ago, he said. Breast cancer. Fast in calendar time. Slow in the nights. I'm sorry, she said, and to his surprise there was no script in it, no corporate sympathy, just the simple weight of a person standing near another person's pain. Me too, he said. Every day. They turned where the land wanted them to. A ribbon of animal trail offered itself narrow-trodden by countless soft feet, skirting a stand of young alders. The socks had turned her steps from wincing to merely cautious. Color had come back to her face. She looked less like a headline and more like a woman rumpled, capable, annoyed alive. What about you? He asked. Family? No husband, she said briskly. No kids. A mother who thinks my calendar is a moral failure. A brother who borrows money like it's oxygen. And Marcus, she admitted. who texts me at 2 a.m. to ask if I'm sleeping, then schedules a 4 a.m. call in case I am. That's not sleeping, Ethan said. No, she agreed. It's not living either. They paused at a break in the trees. Through the gap, the world opened into a shallow valley washed with late afternoon light, the kind of color that makes even tired things look holy. Far off, a strip of gravel winked through scrub. There she is, Ethan said softly. Old service road. Thank God, she muttered, relief loosening her shoulders. He took a step, then hesitated. Before we hit it, do you want your heel back? She snorted a sound she probably didn't make in boardrooms. Burn it. Put it on a little pyre. I'll settle for keeping it, he said. Proof you were here. She regarded him, measuring, recalibrating. Mr. Callahan? Ethan. Ethan, she conceded. When we reach the lodge, there will be cameras. There will be questions I won't want to answer and answers I won't want to give. I don't want them to use you. I don't belong to them, he said simply. They'll try to buy your story. I'm not for sale. You might be surprised what a number can do. I know exactly what a number can do, he said, and his voice had steel in it suddenly. It can turn a girl's education into a price tag. She absorbed that like a blow, then kept walking. They reached the road, a brown ribbon strewn with cones and stones. 2 ruts pressed deep by trucks that came less and less each year. It angled north toward the ridge where he knew the lodge crouched like a wooden cat with a porch. Victoria's pace quickened instinctively on the packed dirt. City muscle memory sidewalk corridor gait returned to her legs. She looked taller without the heel than she had with it. So she said, as if pitching herself to herself, plan. We get to the lodge. I access a phone contact. Marcus mobilize resources. What do you need, Ethan? He blinked at the question. No one asked him that. They told him what he should be. I need Lily to keep her seat in the advanced program. How much? 800, he said. And the number tasted like humility and grit. Per semester. She nodded once, decisive. Done. It's not charity, he said immediately. It's a cost of doing business with me. She countered, then softened. It's an investment in someone who matters. He slowed, wary. Why? Because you climbed a tree. That's not how investment works. It is, if I say it is, she said, and there was the CEO again, flinty, certain. But when she turned her face toward his, some gentler argument worked in her eyes. And because you're the first person in a very long time who didn't want anything from me but what I could give in the moment. My hand, my weight, my trust. They walked without speaking for a while, the conversation settling into the dust behind them. The road climbed, then fell in a long sigh. When the wind shifted, they could smell wood smoke from far ahead, a thin thread of civilization unspooling toward them. At a bend, Ethan stopped and crouched, touching the road's edge. A fresh set of tire prints cut the dust wide and square with pebbles crushed new. Someone's been through today, he said. Rescue, she asked. Could be, he said. Could be a ranger. Could be someone out to check if the lodge coffee maker is as dead as mine. Please don't joke about dead coffee makers. He looked up at her, a smile finding him before he knew it. If the machine's still breathing, I'll get you a cup. And for you, coffee's wasted on me, he said. I drink it for heat. Then I'll buy you something less tragic than instant powder. Careful, he said. That sounds dangerously like liking me. She rolled her eyes, but didn't deny it. The road turned once more and leveled. Through the trees, a darker shape resolved at the far edge of a clearing, low roofline, carved posts, the limp flag of a summer camp long tucked away for winter. Not the lodge itself, but a ranger outpost windows throwing back the late light. We're close, Ethan said. Victoria exhaled a whole day, leaving her in one long stream. I have never been more grateful to see ugly architecture. Don't insult her, he said. She's saved more people than she's bored. They moved toward this building, tired but pulled forward by the promise of walls and a phone and a world she knew how to manage. Somewhere behind them, the forest stitched the gap they'd opened, keeping its secrets, keeping its counsel. At the threshold, Victoria paused, hand on the rough railing, and looked back the way they'd come. Her voice, when it came, was soft enough he almost missed it. Thank you for not leaving me in the tree. He nodded once. Thank you for climbing. He pushed the door. It gave with a wooden sigh. And on the desk inside, beneath a clipped stack of permits and a map tacked with red pins, lay the papers that would set the next fire between them. The ranger outpost smelled of dust-old coffee grounds and paper left too long in damp air. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, flickering with a tired persistence that matched the place. The room was small, 2 desks pressed against opposite walls, filing cabinets scarred with years of use, a corkboard full of curling notices about fire bans and bear sightings. Ethan closed the door behind them, shutting out the waning daylight. The sound of the latch echoed louder than it should have, as if the little station hadn't heard human voices in weeks. Victoria stepped inside slowly, heels of her borrowed socks whispering across the wooden floor. Her gaze darted to the radio on the desk. Finally, she breathed, making a beeline for it. Civilization. But when she pressed the button, the machine spat static, long, ragged bursts that fizzled into silence. She frowned, adjusted a dial, tried again. "Do you know anything about these?" Ethan moved beside her, rolling up his sleeves. Enough! His fingers were steady, deliberate, checking the power switch, twisting knobs until he found a frequency carrying faint chatter. Crackle. Then Forest Service Station 7. "This is base command. Do you copy?" Ethan leaned to the mic. "Copy base command. We have 2 civilians safe, no injuries. Provide names for the record," came the clipped reply. He looked at her, waiting. "Victoria Hale," she said quietly, chin lifting in defiance of her own dishevelment. The line fell into a pause. Then a sharper voice returned. "Confirm Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Technologies." She answered. Static hissed again, followed by the strained politeness of command. "Ms. Hale, we have teams en route. You've been missing since last night. Media outlets are reporting your disappearance. Your company's stock has been affected." Her face drained of color. "Stock, your assistant and board members have contacted state authorities. Expect recovery within the hour." She lowered the mic, staring at the desk as if the grain of wood could rewrite what she'd just heard. "They know. Everyone knows." Ethan didn't answer. He drifted toward the second desk, drawn by the mess of documents spread across it. Maps, stamped forms, proposals stacked and half-signed. He picked one up, absently scanning the heading, and froze. The words burned his eyes. Cedar Falls Expansion Project. He flipped another page. More details, land surveys, zoning adjustments, phrases like proposed acquisition and displacement projections. His town, his street, his home. The breath left his chest in one long, low exhale. Victoria noticed. "What is it?" He turned the paper toward her, knuckles white against the edges. "You tell me." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing as they skimmed the print. Confusion first, then dawning recognition, then horror. "Oh my God!" "You knew about this." Ethan's voice was flat, controlled only by sheer will. She faltered, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I signed off, but I never. Marcus handles development proposals. He gives me summaries. I don't study every site." Ethan's laugh was sharp and without humor. "So while you were sitting at my fire talking about helping people live better lives, your company was drawing maps to bulldoze mine." She swallowed hard, the weight of the papers shaking in her grip. "I didn't realize. Would it have mattered if you had—" He shot back. Her lips parted, closed again. No answer came. The room's silence thickened, filled only by the static still murmuring from the radio. Ethan shoved the stack back on the desk, papers scattering across the floor like broken promises. His jaw flexed, his chest heaved, but his voice stayed low, steady. "My daughter's school losing funding, me breaking my back to find work. This is why. Because you've been buying up land, squeezing us out to make way for your playground of luxury condos." "That's not what it's supposed to be," she said weakly, though even as she said it, her eyes betrayed her doubt. "That's exactly what it is." The tension in the little outpost was suffocating, her expensive perfume mixed with dust and ink and his raw anger until it felt combustible. Through the window, headlights bobbed in the distance, cutting through the trees like search beams. Voices faint at first, then clearer. The rescue team. Media shadows trailed close behind their shouts, already carried by the wind. Victoria's chest rose and fell, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan, please, we need to talk about this. Let me explain. He shook his head slowly. What's there to explain? You go back to your empire. My house gets torn down in 6 months. That's the equation, isn't it? She reached for him instinctively, then stopped, fingers curling in the air. It doesn't have to be. It already is. The first knock thundered on the door. Rescue, reporters, reality. Ethan stood still, hand hovering over the knob, his eyes locked on hers. For a heartbeat, he let her see it. The crack of betrayal layered on top of grief, layered on top of the weight he already carried. And then he pulled the door open, letting the blinding camera light spill into the dusty little room, drowning the fragile fire they'd shared in the woods. The light from outside exploded into the cabin like a flashbang. Voices clamored, instantly, shouts, questions, the mechanical whir of cameras snapping every frame they could steal. Miss Hale. How does it feel to be rescued? Mr. Callahan, did you save her life? Was there a romance in the wilderness? The questions overlapped until they tangled into noise, the kind that made Ethan's jaw clench. He squinted against the floodlights mounted on news cameras, instinctively stepping sideways to shield Victoria from the worst of it, though he wasn't sure why anymore. The rescue crew muscled through the chaos, first uniforms, crisp radios crackling. One ranger touched Ethan's shoulder. Sir, you all right? Any injuries? I'm fine, Ethan muttered. His eyes tracked the sea of faces the way the cameras clung to Victoria like bees to sugar. She was already surrounded, her disheveled hair caught in the glare, reporters jamming microphones inches from her lips. Someone shoved a jacket around her shoulders, designer brought by her assistant, who had materialized from the crush like a magician. Miss Hale, were you kidnapped? Did this man hold you in the woods? Was it survival or scandal? Ethan felt his stomach turn. Each question twisted the truth into something uglier, something for sale. He took a step back suddenly, desperate for distance. Victoria's voice cut through, firm but tired. I'm fine. We were lost. Ethan helped me, that's all. But the press didn't care. They smelled story. They smelled blood. Are you grateful to him? Did he protect you? Is he a hero? The word made Ethan flinch. Hero. He wasn't a hero. He was a father barely holding his world together. He thought of Lily's cereal bowl, the soggy flakes she'd pushed around to make breakfast last longer. He thought of the scholarship letter folded so many times it was nearly falling apart. And he thought of the development map still burning in his jacket pocket, map signed by the woman now bathed in camera flashes like a saint. Sir. A reporter lunged toward him. Do you plan to sue Hale Technologies? Will you cash in on your story? Ethan's teeth ground together. He pushed past the microphones, heading for one of the ranger trucks waiting near the edge of the lot. I'm done here, he said, voice low. Behind him, Victoria turned. Their eyes caught for a fraction of a second, hers pleading his hard. She looked as if she wanted to call out, but the crowd pressed in, sweeping her back toward her world of handlers and headlines. The ranger opened the passenger door for him. We'll take you home, Mr. Callahan. Ethan climbed in, every movement heavy. As the truck pulled away, he glanced through the rear window. Victoria was already swallowed by her entourage, her assistant clutching a phone to one ear. Board members arguing in sharp whispers, reporters snapping at the edges like wolves. She looked smaller in the chaos, almost fragile. He turned away. The ride back was quiet, except for the murmur of the ranger's radio. Town lights flickered closer with each mile. Cedar Falls, tired, stubborn, clinging to survival, waited. By the time they reached his street, the story had already outrun him. Neighbors lingered on porches, cell phones glowing blue in their hands. Cars slowed as they passed drivers gawking. News had traveled faster than wildfire, local single dad lost in woods with billionaire CEO. Ethan stepped out of the truck, jaw set against the stairs. He climbed the porch steps where Lily sat, backpack at her feet, eyes wide. Dad, she whispered, I saw the news. Are you okay? He crouched, pulling her into his arms. Her hair smelled of school and soap, grounding him in something real. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a strange couple of days. They said you were with some rich lady, she murmured into his shirt. I was. Did you like her? Her eyes searched his sharp and too knowing for 12. The question stole his breath. He opened his mouth, closed it. It's complicated. Everything's complicated with you. Lily sighed, but she leaned into him anyway, trusting him in ways he wasn't sure he deserved. Inside, the phone wouldn't stop ringing, unknown numbers lighting up the cracked screen, buzzing with persistence. On the fourth try, he answered. "This is Janet Walsh with Channel 7 News," came the brisk voice. "We'd like to offer you an exclusive interview. 5 figures." "Mr. Callahan, enough to solve a lot of problems. Perhaps fund your daughter's education." His hand tightened on the phone. 5 figures. More money than he'd seen in years. Enough for the scholarship, enough for the truck, enough for breathing space. "No," he said and hung up. Lily's gaze was steady. "That was about the lady, wasn't it?" "Yeah." "And you said no. Why?" "Because some things aren't for sale," he told her. Though the ache in his chest said the cost of that integrity might be everything. That night, after Lily drifted to sleep over her homework, Ethan sat alone on the porch. The cool air pressed against him, crickets chirping in the weeds, the world deceptively calm. But in his pocket, the folded development proposal crackled like a live wire. Target 47. That was his house, his street, his life. And the signature on the page, the name etched in bold black ink, was hers. Victoria Hale. The woman he'd saved. The woman who'd smiled at his fire. The woman who would tear his world apart. The night pressed heavy around the small house, but Ethan didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, the single overhead bulb casting a tired cone of light that turned the laminate into a pale moon. Outside the neighborhood exhaled the occasional car, a dog, 2 blocks over, wind slipping through the maple like it had secrets. Inside, the only sound was the soft tick of the wall clock and the grit of his own breath. He set the folded papers from the ranger station down in front of him, smoothed them, unsmoothed them. The black ink shouted even in whisper light. Acquisition maps, parcels outlined like puzzle pieces, arrows, timelines, acronyms that all meant the same thing. Change is coming, and it doesn't care if you're ready. Target 47. He traced the rectangle with a calloused finger. His block, his roofline like a little tooth in a long jaw. Claire's garden sketched over in gray. The scribbled annotation for a future access road cutting, right where Lily chalked hopscotch on summer afternoons. And the river turn, God the river, where he'd proposed to Claire on a cold April morning, coffee breath, and shaking hands, a ring bought with drywall money, and hope rebranded on this page as Lot B Retail Parking North. Parking. Where his life had happened. He laughed. It surprised him how brittle it sounded. The old laptop came to life with a fan whine as if startled from a long sleep it didn't deserve. The screen woke in patches, a corner pixel stubborn as a mule. He opened the browser, typed slowly. The internet dragged itself toward him like something wounded. Still, page by page, the details bloomed. Press releases, investor decks, photographs so glossy you could see the reflection of the photographer's ambition in them. Hale Technologies Cedar Ridge Integrated Campus Plus Community. Cedar Ridge, now not Cedar Falls. Though one PDF still used the wrong name in a header, a little tell that stung like someone mispronouncing a loved one's name at their own birthday. He clicked that one, read carefully. Revitalize underutilized rural land, attract high-earning remote professionals, improve tax base via commercial anchors. The verbs ran over his life like a set of new tires, clean and untroubled. He scrolled to a color and legend map, watched little squares glow with projections. His home was flagged as Acquisition Priority Tier 1. He sat back, pressed his thumb and forefinger into his eyes until constellations sparked in the dark. The phone buzzed. He ignored it, buzzed again. He flipped it over. Unknown number. We'd like to offer. He swiped it away without finishing. Unknown 10,000 for your swipe. Unknown exclusive. Cash today. Swipe. He almost turned it off. This ancient thing with a cracked corner and a scab of tape over the battery cover, suddenly it was a key that fit every door he didn't want to open. He set it face down like laying a lid over a pot that threatened to boil over. The house settled. The bulb hummed. He could feel the place breathing around him, all its tired miracles, the refrigerator that shuddered to life like an old man clearing his throat. The water heater ticking its complaint, The floorboard by the sink that remembered Claire's weight and sang a small groan every time someone stood where she stood to wash apples. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and took out the card he carried years beyond its occasion Father's Day, purple crayon, a lopsided heart with 3 stick figures and a blue fish the size of a submarine. In Lily's careful lettering, World's Best Dad. The edges were rounded by time. A tiny rip marked the fold where he'd opened and closed it on nights like this, when belief needed proof. He laid the card next to the map. Love beside logistics. The difference between living and being managed. A floorboard creaked. Lily, barefoot hair messed into some fierce halo, appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing sleep from one eye with the heel of her hand. "You're still up," she said, voice thick. "Couldn't sleep," he answered, keeping his tone light. She shuffled closer, spotted the documents, the laptop's sharp rectangles of light on paper. She read fast for 12. He watched how quickly her mouth tightened. "Is that about that project?" she asked carefully. "The one with the lady from TV." "Yeah. Is it our street?" He hesitated. She saw it. She always saw it. "It is," he said. "Maybe. Nothing's final." She slid into the chair beside him, knees bumping his. Her gaze moved from map to Father's Day card to his face. "Are we going to have to move?" "I'm not letting anyone take our house," he said, more vow than information. She leaned into his shoulder, small and warm. "Okay." They sat like that for a minute, the old clock tapping out the seconds like a teacher's pencil at the front of a quiet class. He felt her steadying him without trying to. She'd gotten that from Claire, the way presence itself could be a hand on your back. "You liked her," Lily said finally. Not a question. He stared at the map. "It's complicated." "Everything is." She agreed, then yawned a sound straight from her toddler years. Maybe she forgot how to be normal. He smiled despite himself. "Where'd you get that Mrs. Patterson says adults forget things that aren't on their calendars? Smart teacher." "Mom was smarter," she said, soft, without sadness. "But Mrs. Patterson tries." He swallowed, nodded. "She does." The phone buzzed again. He flipped it, ready to dispatch more offers like flies, and froze at the name. "Victoria Hale." "We need to talk, please." He stared. The word please did a strange thing in his chest. He didn't answer. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Victoria Hale. "I'm at the Cedar Ridge Inn, room 214, tomorrow, anytime." He watched the screen like it might bite, then set the phone down face first as if that might turn the message into something unarrived. Lily's eyes were on him. "Is that her?" "Yeah." "Are you going to go?" He exhaled long and slow. "I don't know." She thought about that chin propped on her hand, the universal posture of a girl making sense of a world too big. "You should hear her out," she decided. "Then decide." "Since when do you give me advice?" "Since forever," she said seriously, then ruined it with a grin. "Also, I punched a boy once for saying your truck was a trash can." He lifted an eyebrow. What I mean. In my head, she amended, innocent as a choir. Then, "You always say we don't run from hard things." He looked down at her. "You're 12. I'm practically 13, she countered. He laughed, then didn't. "You know I'm proud of you, right?" She nodded. "I know. Go back to bed, kiddo." She pushed to her feet, hesitated, bent to kiss the top of his head, the way Claire used to. "Don't stay up too late. You look extra old when you don't sleep." "Thanks," he said dryly. She paused in the doorway. "Dad?" "Yeah. I think Mom would want you to listen first, then fight if you need to." He couldn't speak past the knot in his throat, so he raised a hand in a half salute. She vanished down the hall, footsteps soft, door whispering shut. He stared at the map until the lines went blurry. Then he shut the laptop and gathered the documents, folding them into the manila envelope the ranger had shoved at him in the chaos, unasked for, and now indispensable. On the counter near the jar of loose change and the magnet-clipped coupons he never remembered to use lay something small and orange he didn't remember dropping there, a plastic emergency whistle. He must have pocketed it at the outpost without thinking, a habit from construction sites where tools migrated to your person just by nearness. He lifted it, turned it, put it to his lips and blew gently. A thin, piercing note sliced the quiet. He flinched and laughed at himself, set it down. The sound hung a second in the air, then dissolved into night. Call for help, the whistle said. Or don't. Either way, choose. He turned out the kitchen light, and the house exhaled into dark. In the bedroom, he lay on top of the covers and watched the slow rotation of headlights sliding across the ceiling whenever a car passed, like a clock made of ghost light. He slept and didn't, drifting in the exhausted half-place where worry and hope argue in whispers. The morning found him in the yard, coffee steaming in a chipped mug sunrise, painting the eastern sky thin pink behind the bare trees. The truck sat where he'd left it, hunkered, offended by winter, the hood like a sigh. He put a hand on it anyway, as if apology could fix metal. His phone buzzed again this time, a name he knew in his bones, Rebecca. He let it ring once, twice, then answered. Hey. Don't, hey, me, she snapped, Pacific Northwest irony, polished smooth by city life. I woke up to a news push notification like the rest of the country. You got lost in the woods with a billionaire. We got turned around, he said. It was a day. And now there are reporters calling my work asking for comment about your wilderness romance. There was no romance. She snorted. There's always a narrative. And here's mine, Ethan. You are not capable of providing a stable environment. Lily is 12. She needs consistency. She needs her dad, he said low. And she's got one. Courts don't care about sentiment. Rebecca went on, a lawyer without the title. They care about facts, chaos, instability, danger. My firm's associate is already drafting. Do not threaten me, he said, and for once the iron in his voice outlasted her volume. Do not use Lily as leverage because your boss is mad his paralegal had to say no comment before coffee. Silence. Then she shifted gears as he knew she would. The scholarship meeting, did you go? It was postponed. Of course it was. Her sigh was efficient. I'm coming up this weekend. He almost told her not to. He almost told her to come now to see the house she'd left them to figure out, to see how much love could fit inside 4 rooms that needed paint. Instead, he said, fine. She hung up without a goodbye. The line clicked like a slammed door. He stared at the dead phone for a second, then shoved it in his pocket and went inside to wake Lily, to scramble the last of the eggs with a splash of almost expired milk, to pack a lunch that would look meager next to some other kids, but still be enough. He braided her hair the way Claire had taught him, poorly, but better every time. He walked her to school because the truck had opinions and the morning air bit clean. She swung their joined hands in a pattern she'd made when she was 5 and had decided walking should never be boring. At the front steps, she squeezed his fingers twice, code their code for I love you. He squeezed back 3 times, the answer for me too. After she disappeared into the stream of backpacks and chatter, he stood a long minute on the sidewalk, like a man who had forgotten where to go next. He checked the time. He checked his excuses. The text from Victoria waited like a weight in his pocket. Room 214. Anytime. He lasted until noon. By then he'd tried to talk himself out of it 6 different ways. Pride, anger, dignity. The obvious fact that she could talk circles around him on any ground that had carpet and a front desk. But he heard Lily's voice in the back of his head. Listen first. Then fight if you need to, and he found his feet turning toward Main Street, toward the gabled white of the Cedar Ridge Inn, toward the thing that scared him more than maps or money or cameras. Toward a conversation that might change everything again. He stopped at the crosswalk and waited for the light the small green man illuminated against a sky chalked with winter. In the reflection on the glass of the bakery window, he saw himself, unshaven work jacket zipped against the cold, a man made of 1,000 small repairs. He nodded once to that reflection as if to say, "You've done harder things." When the light changed, he stepped off the curb. The Cedar Ridge Inn had never looked imposing before. It was just a converted Victorian with 12 rooms, flower boxes that drooped in summer, and a breakfast nook that doubled as the lobby. But as Ethan walked up the steps, the place felt taller, wider, like a threshold he wasn't sure he had the right to cross. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and burnt coffee. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up, more interested in a paperback novel than a guest who clearly didn't fit the usual profile of traveling consultants or weekend tourists. "I'm here for someone in 214, Ethan muttered. The clerk glanced up, expression giving away nothing. "She said you might come." "Go on up." His boots thudded against the old carpeted stairs. Each step echoed with a quiet rhythm like a countdown. At the second-floor landing, the hallway stretched ahead. Walls lined with framed prints of waterfalls and forests, reminders of the very wilderness that had become a battlefield between them. He stopped at the door. 214. White numerals, slightly crooked, screwed into the wood. He raised his hand to knock, then lowered it, then raised it again. His chest tightened like a vice. The door opened before he touched it. Victoria stood there, framed in soft light from the window behind her. No power suit today? No polished armor, just jeans and a gray sweater. Her hair loose, her eyes ringed with fatigue. For a moment she looked like someone who might live next door. Someone ordinary. "You came," she said, voice hushed. "I came to tell you to leave my town alone," Ethan replied, not stepping across the threshold. "Fair enough." She hesitated, then moved aside. "But can I make my case first?" Against his better judgment, he entered. The room was small but carefully kept. A narrow bed, a writing desk cluttered with documents, and a window seat overlooking Main Street where townsfolk passed with shopping bags and coffee cups. On the desk, papers spread like a storm. Ethan recognized some immediately: maps, purchase agreements, zoning applications. "I've been working all night," she said, gesturing toward the mess. "Trying to figure out how to fix this." "Fix what?" His voice was sharp. "The project that's already halfway through strangling my town. Or the part where you pretended you cared while knowing your signature was on the wrecking ball." She flinched, but didn't retreat. "The damage my company has done. The Cedar Falls project. I want to change it." He picked up one of the contracts, scanning it with disbelief. "These are deeds. Your properties." "Yes." She folded her arms, steadying herself. "My condo in San Francisco, the Seattle house, even the Aspen place. You're selling them, all of them. It should free enough capital to compensate families already pressured to sell. And I'll propose restructuring the project entirely focused on affordable housing community renewal instead of luxury displacement." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Why?" She didn't blink. "Because you were right." His eyes narrowed. "Because Lily deserves a future that isn't bought and sold like stock she pressed. Because I remembered what it felt like to be human, sitting by your fire, listening to you talk about her. I don't want to forget that again." He sank into the lone chair, staring at her. "This doesn't make sense. People like you don't throw away millions because a stranger scolds them in the woods. You're not a stranger." Her voice softened. "And it isn't charity. It's me trying to build something worth building instead of something profitable." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the radiator. She held his gaze, her jaw set, not in corporate confidence, but in something closer to resolve. He pulled Lily's crayon drawing from his wallet, the one of them fishing the words "World's Best Dad" blazoned in purple. The edges were creased from too many folds. He placed it on the desk between them. "You know what this is?" he asked. Her hand trembled as she touched the paper lightly. "Your daughter's art. She drew this 6 months after Claire died," Ethan said. His throat tightened, but he pushed on. "That spot by the river where we used to take picnics, where I proposed, that's in your plans. A parking lot." Her face drained. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask?" he snapped. She closed her eyes, pain rippling across her features. "You're right. I saw demographics, not families. Market potential, not memories." The phone on the nightstand buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. She silenced it without looking. What if she said, "Suddenly we tried to develop it differently. Jobs opportunity, but without tearing away the roots. What if your people were part of it instead of casualties of it?" Ethan shook his head. "That's a fantasy. Not if we fight for it." Before he could answer, his own phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it free, frowning at the caller ID. "Lily's school." He answered immediately. "Mr. Callahan." "This is Mrs. Brooks. We need you to come in right away. There's been an incident." Ethan shot to his feet. "What kind of incident? Is Lily hurt?" "She's fine physically, but There was trouble with some other students, teasing about the news coverage of your wilderness ordeal. She may have punched a boy. The room tilted. He closed his eyes. I'll be right there. When he hung up, Victoria was watching him, concern in her face. Is she okay? She's suspended, he muttered, shoving the drawing back into his wallet. And this, he gestured at the papers, the maps, her. This is why. Because kids are cruel, because the world doesn't let us live quiet lives. He moved to the door. Ethan, she said softly, almost pleading. The person you saw in the woods. That person is real. I want to fight for her, for Lily, for Cedar Falls. He paused, hand on the doorknob. The silence between them stretched heavy with things unsaid. Finally he said, maybe it's time you prove it. And he walked out. The principal's office smelled of pencil shavings, coffee, and the faint tang of disinfectant that never quite masked the scent of 100 restless kids. Ethan sat stiff in the chair beside Lily, who looked smaller than usual despite the stubborn tilt of her chin. Her knuckles were scraped, one eye shadowed faintly where tears had been wiped in a hurry. Principal Morrison folded her hands on the desk. She was a patient woman, her hair gray at the temples, her eyes carrying the weight of years spent wrangling middle school drama. Mr. Callahan. Thank you for coming. We need to talk about Lily's behavior at lunch today. I didn't start it. Lily burst out before Ethan could speak. He said things, mean things, about Dad, about Mom. Lily, Ethan said softly, trying to calm her, but she pressed on, words tumbling out fast, hot. He said Dad faked being lost just to get money from that rich lady. He said maybe Dad kidnapped her for ransom. And then Lily's voice cracked, her eyes shining with furious tears. He said Mom would be ashamed of Dad, that she died just to get away from him. Ethan felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He looked at Principal Morrison, who nodded gravely. Several students corroborated that Tommy Brennan instigated the insults. Still, violence isn't acceptable. Lily punched him. He wouldn't take it back, Lily muttered. So I made him. The principal sighed. She'll need to serve a one-day suspension. Ethan placed a steadying hand on his daughter's shoulder. We understand. His voice was tight but controlled. He wouldn't let her carry the shame for defending him, even if the school demanded a punishment. As they walked to the truck, silent, hulking, still temperamental Lily's jaw was set in that stubborn line that reminded him of Claire. She swung her backpack like a weapon at her side. Am I in trouble at home too? She asked finally. Ethan glanced at her. For standing up for your family. No. For throwing a punch. We'll talk about better ways to handle it, but he deserved it. Maybe. But sometimes not hitting back is the braver thing. He paused, then added, doesn't mean I'm not proud you defended me. That earned him a small, shaky smile. When they reached the parking lot, a sleek black sedan was waiting. Ethan recognized it instantly. His stomach tightened. Victoria Hale leaned against the car arms, folded an envelope in her hands. She looked different than the woman at the inn, more composed, less wrecked, but her eyes still carried something raw. Lily saw her first. Dad, she hissed. That's her, isn't it? Ethan said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. She's prettier than she looked on TV, Lily muttered, not unkindly. Come on, Ethan said, guiding her toward the car. Let's get this over with. Victoria straightened as they approached. She crouched slightly so she was at Lily's eye level. You must be Lily, she said gently. I've heard a lot about you. Lily crossed her arms, her scraped knuckles white. I heard you're trying to steal our house. Lily, Ethan warned, but Victoria raised a hand. She's right, she said quietly. My company was planning to take your house. Tear it down. Build something else. She held out the envelope. But that was before. Was planning. Past tense. These are the papers canceling the Cedar Falls project permanently. Ethan's brow furrowed as he took the envelope. He opened it with rough fingers and scanned the letter inside. Official company letterhead. Signed by the entire board of directors. Every acquisition terminated. Development plans dissolved. Just like that. His voice was skeptical, edged. Not just like that, she said, a small, weary smile tugging at her mouth. It took 6 hours of arguing 2 resignation threats, and me agreeing to personally compensate the company for the projected losses. How much? Ethan asked, the word more accusation than question. About 40 million, she said simply. Lily's mouth fell open. 40 million? That's like a bazillion pizzas. Victoria laughed softly, but her eyes stayed locked on Ethan. It's most of my net worth, but I realized I don't need as much as I thought I did. Ethan looked down at the papers again. The official seal glared back at him, undeniable. For once it wasn't promises, it was proof. Why, he asked quietly. Because I remembered what it felt like to matter to someone, she said. Not because of money. Not because of status. Just because. And I don't ever want to forget that again. Lily tilted her head, studying her with the blunt honesty of a child. Are you still rich, Lily? Ethan muttered. But Victoria smiled, shaking her head. Yes, I'm still rich, but not obscenely rich anymore. I'm just regular rich. What's the difference? Regular rich means I can buy what I want. Obscenely rich means I can buy what everyone else wants too, even when they don't want to sell. Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. So you decided you didn't want to be obscene anymore. Exactly. The girl looked between them, then said with the clarity of someone much older than 12, Dad, I think you should forgive her. Mom would want you to. Ethan's throat closed. He stared at his daughter, stunned by her grace, by the way she could cut straight to the bone of things. Victoria's eyes shimmered. Your daughter is wiser than both of us, she whispered. She gets that from her mother, Ethan said automatically. No, Lily corrected firmly. I get that from both of you. Mom taught me to be smart. You taught me to be fair. The silence that followed was thick with something fragile but alive. Ethan folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it under his arm. For the first time since he'd seen the maps, the weight on his chest lifted just slightly. The parking lot had emptied by the time they stood there, the three of them suspended in a quiet triangle of decision. Lily shifted her backpack higher, watching her father and the woman who had, in a single stroke of pen and will, unraveled a project that could have erased their lives. Ethan tightened his grip on the envelope, not ready to trust it, not ready to let himself believe in miracles born from corporate boardrooms. Victoria reached into her coat pocket and pulled out another folded sheet of paper. This one wasn't typed on glossy letterhead. It was handwritten, her own neat script filling every line. She held it out to him. This is my resignation, effective immediately. I'm leaving Hale Technologies. Ethan blinked, the words clanging in his head. You quit your company. I quit my old life, she corrected softly. The board has their letter canceling Cedar Falls. But this, she tapped to the page, this is for me. I'm starting over. A new company, one that doesn't destroy communities to build them. And I was hoping you might consider being part of it. He stared at her, dumbstruck. Me. You know this town. You know what people actually need instead of what surveys or consultants pretend they want. And more than that, her eyes flicked toward Lily. You know how to keep people human in the middle of hard decisions. I need someone like that. Someone who can keep me honest. Ethan shook his head, almost laughing. I pour concrete. I swing a hammer. I'm not a businessman. You're more than that, she said, the steadiness in her voice startling him. You're the most principled person I've met in years. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Dad, I think you should say yes. Why? He asked, almost defensive. Because you're happy when you talk about her, Lily answered simply. And maybe this is how we help other families like ours. The words cracked something inside him. He looked at his daughter, then at the resignation letter trembling slightly in his hands. He looked at Victoria, who stood uncharacteristically vulnerable, stripped of all the armor he'd first seen in her. Okay, he said at last, the syllables weighted but real. Okay, let's try. Victoria's smile was radiant, unguarded in a way that transformed her face completely. Really, really. But I have conditions. Her smile widened. Name them. Lily's scholarship gets funded, not as charity, as an investment in this community. Done. And our first project stays here. Cedar Falls. We create opportunities for the people who already live here before we worry about outsiders. Absolutely. Lily raised her hand like she was in class. Both adults turned to her. I have a condition too. Ethan fought a smile. What's that kiddo? I want her to come to dinner. At our house. I want to meet the person you talk to around the campfire, not the one on TV. Victoria crouched eye level with Lily. Her voice was gentle, almost tender. I'd be honored, but I should warn you I'm not a very good cook. That's okay, Lily said with a grin. Dad's not either. We order pizza a lot. Victoria laughed, and something about the sound melted the last bit of frost between them. Ethan found himself smiling too for the first time in days, without the weight of bitterness crushing it. He didn't know where this road would lead. He didn't know if he could ever completely forgive the harm she'd signed off on, even unknowingly. But he knew this for the first time since Claire's death. He was looking forward, instead of only trying to survive. Come on, he said, glancing at both of them. Let's go home. As they walked toward the old truck, the winter sun caught in the cracked windshield, painting it in fractured light. Ethan opened the passenger door for his daughter, then glanced back at Victoria, who followed slowly, almost reverently, as if each step toward his world was a vow. And though he didn't say it aloud, a thought settled heavy but steady in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, second chances were real. 6 months later, the morning sun spilled across Cedar Falls in shades of gold, turning rooftops warm and fields soft with promise. From the porch of his old clapboard house, once stamped Acquisition Target 47 in black ink, Ethan Callahan leaned against the rail, coffee mug in hand, and watched Lily race across the yard. She was 13 now, taller, quicker, her laughter carrying farther than it had in years. She bounded down the steps to greet the sensible Honda sedan pulling into the drive. The car door opened and Victoria Hale, no, not Hale anymore. Just Victoria emerged with a grocery bag in one hand and a leather briefcase in the other. Ronnie, Lily shouted, using the nickname she'd stubbornly given her months ago. Did you bring the contracts? I brought them. Victoria called back, smiling. She lifted the bag. And dinner, real dinner, not pizza. You can cook now, Ethan teased from the porch. One eyebrow raised. I can follow recipes now, she replied, laughing as she climbed the steps. There's a difference. He took the briefcase from her, their fingers brushing. The touch lingered longer than either of them admitted aloud. How was the community center meeting? He asked. Better than expected. Her grin carried the satisfaction of a hard-won fight. The council approved our proposal unanimously. Even Mayor Harris signed off. Ethan let out a low whistle. Mayor Harris. That's a miracle. Or maybe just good math, she quipped. Projected job numbers speak louder than speeches. 6 months had changed everything. The Cedar Falls project had been reborn as Cedar Valley Development, a company owned jointly by Victoria and a group of townspeople. Their mission wasn't luxury condos or glass towers. It was affordable homes, community spaces, and a small business incubator where locals could build dreams without being bulldozed by outsiders. It was slower work, messier work, but it was real. Inside the kitchen carried the smell of beef stew simmering on the stove. Victoria had been determined to learn recipes, refusing to let Lily grow up thinking pizza delivery was the only family dinner. Tonight the table was already set, mismatched plates, a vase of wildflowers Lily had collected on her walk home from school. Emma, sorry, Lily. Victoria corrected herself with a smile. How was school today? Good Lily said, sliding into her chair. I got my report card. She held out the folder proudly. Ethan opened it, scanning the rows of grades. All A's. He ruffled her hair, his chest swelling. That's my brilliant girl. Mrs. Patterson says I'm ready to start the advanced math program at the community college next semester, Lily added casually. Like it was no big deal. She thinks I might be able to take college courses by the time I'm 14. Victoria and Ethan exchanged a glance. It still stunned him how quickly Lily's mind had blossomed once the constant pressure of financial worry had lifted. With her scholarship secure, with the weight of uncertainty eased, she'd thrown herself into learning with a joy that made Ethan ache with pride. We'll talk about it, Ethan said carefully. College courses are a big step. Mom would have wanted me to. Lily, replied her voice, carrying that quiet certainty that always reminded Ethan of Claire. Dinner was filled with laughter, Victoria stumbling over a joke, Lily correcting her with adolescent superiority, Ethan watching the two of them trade stories as if they'd been a family forever. Afterward, Lily disappeared upstairs to work on a science project, leaving Ethan and Victoria at the table surrounded by empty bowls and the glow of lamplight. "I have something for you," she said, pulling an envelope from her briefcase. He groaned. "Please tell me it's not more incorporation paperwork. I'm still traumatized by the last stack." She smiled, shaking her head. "Better." She slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a photograph, a family portrait taken the previous weekend at Lily's insistence. The three of them sat on the porch steps of Ethan's house, Lily in the middle, grinning wide, Ethan's arm draped protectively around her shoulders. Victoria beside them, her smile unguarded, her hand resting gently on Lily's knee. Ethan stared at it, the breath leaving him in a rush. "We look happy." "We are happy," Victoria said softly. "Even me. Especially me." He set the photo on the table where the lamplight caught it. A reminder, permanent and undeniable, that healing was real. That second chances weren't just fairy tales. "I still can't believe you gave up everything for this," he murmured. "I didn't give up everything." She corrected, her voice steady. "I traded everything I thought I wanted for everything I actually needed. And what did you need?" Her gaze held his. "This, you, Lily. A reason to get up in the morning that had nothing to do with stock prices or quarterly projections. A life, not a business plan." The words landed deep, stirring something in him that had been locked away since Claire's death. Before he could answer, Lily bounded down the stairs with her backpack. "I'm going to Sarah's house to work on our project. I'll be back by 9, Sarah Collins," Ethan asked. "The new girl." "Her dad got one of the jobs at the incubator," Lily explained. "He said it's the first time in years he hasn't had to commute 2 hours for work." The front door banged shut behind her, leaving the house in a quiet that felt full. Victoria helped Ethan clear the table sleeves, rolled up, laughter easy. He watched her stack the plates with a kind of reverence he hadn't felt in years, because it wasn't just dishes. It was partnership. It was life messy and real. Later, as they sat back at the kitchen table with mugs of tea, Victoria set her hand on his. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what? About the future, business-wise. Personally." He leaned in, searching her face. "Go on." "Business-wise, we're ready to expand. 3 other communities have already reached out. They want what Cedar Falls has now." "That's good," Ethan said slowly. "And personally," she hesitated, gathering courage, "then I want to move here. Permanently." The words hit him harder than he expected. His heart skipped. "To Cedar Falls?" "Yes. To here. No more back and forth. I want this to be home." The air shifted between them. He swallowed hard, his hand tightening around hers. "Any particular reason?" Her eyes softened. "Several. It's better for work. Lily needs consistency." And she took a breath, her voice trembling just slightly. "I love you." The words fell into the quiet like stones into still water, rippling out in every direction. For a long moment, Ethan just stared. His throat thickened, but he managed to whisper, "I love you too." He lifted her hand, kissed it gently. "I have for months, even though you nearly destroyed this town." She smiled through wet eyes. "And because I chose to save it instead." "Love isn't logical," he said, shaking his head in wonder. "No," she agreed softly. "It isn't. But maybe it's the only thing worth being illogical for." The house was wrapped in quiet after Lily left, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, but expectant, humming with something new. Ethan and Victoria sat close at the kitchen table, their hands still joined across the worn wood. The lamplight made her hair glow. Auburn softened the sharp lines of her face until she looked less like a CEO and more like someone who belonged in a place like this. So Ethan said, breaking the silence at last, "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Her lips curved into a tremulous smile. "I'm asking if you think Lily would mind having a stepmother who's still learning how to be a normal person." Ethan's laugh was low, tender. "I think Lily would be thrilled. She's been dropping hints for weeks." Victoria arched a brow. "Hints?" "Yesterday she asked if you might want to help her pick a dress for the spring dance. Said she needed female perspective from someone who understands both fashion and math." Victoria pressed a hand to her chest, mock dramatic. "She thinks I understand fashion. She thinks you understand everything I don't, he said, grinning. Which, fair. The smile stayed, then softened. Her thumb traced a circle over his knuckles, thoughtful. I don't want to push. We could go slow. One box at a time, or no boxes at all yet. I just know what I want, and for the first time in a long time, it isn't a number or a title. He studied her face, honesty without armor. When you say move here, you mean make this house a home we share. Her gaze flicked around the kitchen, the dinged cabinets, the corkboard with Lily's bus schedule, the chipped blue mixing bowl Claire used to love. If there's room. There it was, the shadow that never left even on good days, the presence in the absences. Claire's laughter and the creak of a floorboard, her handwriting on an old recipe tucked into a drawer. Her memory hung in the air of this house like light you could feel on your skin. Ethan looked at the mixing bowl, then back at Victoria. There's room, he said, voice rough with truth. But it comes with history. I know, she said gently. I don't want to replace anything, or anyone. I don't believe love works like that. He exhaled, something in him unclenching. That's the right answer. They sat there in the hum of the refrigerator and the far-off murmur of a train that only rolled through at night, talking like people who had decided to build a bridge and were laying it plank by plank. Logistics. Always logistics. But this time they were tender, the kind that made room for grief and joy to hold hands. Okay, she said, counting on her fingers in a very un-CEO way. Stuff to solve. Number 1, I need to tell my landlord in Seattle I'm done using the place. Month to month now. I can move in a few weeks. And the office? Ethan asked. She shrugged. Cedar Valley's HQ is the old feed store, which is objectively cooler than any tower I've ever leased. We'll need more space soon, but I like the creaky stairs. Number 2, he prompted. She hesitated. Rebecca. He grimaced. The name landed like a dull hammer. Yeah. I don't want to give her any ammunition, Victoria said. If she's already inclined to paint you as unstable, me moving in might feed a narrative I can't stand to make true. She'll tell a story either way, Ethan said, tugging one corner of the placemat straight. That's her talent. But you're right. We should be thoughtful. What if Victoria said slowly, I split my time for a few months. Keep the Seattle lease through summer. Spend most nights here, but not formally. We set routines. Make sure Lily's steady. Then we make it official. He nodded. That's sane. She squeezed his fingers. I'm learning. They both smiled. The conversation turned to smaller things, the kind that secretly steer the ship. The junk drawer that was only junk in the sense that it contained the things they used most. Where she could put her books, the shelf near the window, the one that gets the morning light. Whether the second bedroom should stay a guest room or become Lily's study nook, once she started those community college classes, Lily's vote would decide it. Everyone knew. The spare hook on the back of the door where a second set of keys could hang like a promise. At some point, Ethan rose to refill both mugs with hot water. The kettle sang thinly. When he turned back, Victoria was standing, fingers trailing along the photographs on the refrigerator. Lily with a fish almost bigger than she was. Claire in a sun hat, freckles bright, laughing at something the camera didn't catch. Ethan in a paper crown at a 7th birthday party, his expression caught between embarrassment and joy. Victoria touched the magnet above Claire's picture and looked up at him. Tell me about that day. The one with the hat. Yeah. Lily made me wear it while grilling, said kings cook for their people. He smiled, the memory warm and a little silly. I burned the hot dogs and learned to cut the black bits off without anyone noticing. And Claire. She pretended not to notice, he said. His voice thinned. That was a good day. Victoria's eyes shone not with jealousy, but with reverence. I'm glad you had a lot of those. He set the mugs down. I did. For a while, they didn't talk at all. They just stood close in a kitchen that had known both laughter and ache, letting time stack around them like plates. When the clock over the doorway tipped toward 8, Ethan glanced at the front hall. Walk with me. We could swing by the river. Lily will text when she's ready to be picked up. Victoria nodded. I'd like that. They bundled into coats and stepped into a night that had gone silver at the edges. The town was unchanged in its small ways, the pharmacy sign flickering, the diner's neon coffee cup steaming endlessly in the window, the sound of a screen door slapping shut a block over. They walked side by side, their hands finding each other easily, like they'd been meant to do that in front of anyone willing to look. When they reached the bend in the river, it was the same and somehow not the same stones he'd knelt on when he asked Claire to be his wife. The same curve where Lily skipped rocks and counted rings in the water. The same cottonwoods leaning to gossip over the current. But the air around it had changed. Not a replacement. An addition. A second thread woven through the first. Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets and watched the slow glide of water. "I used to think there was only one way to love," he said. "Like it was a blueprint, and if you deviated, the house fell down." Victoria leaned into him, shoulder to shoulder. "Blueprints are suggestions," she murmured. "You taught me that." He huffed a laugh. "Pretty sure you taught yourself." Their phones buzzed almost in sync, Lily's text lighting both screens with a cheerful, "Done. Can you pick me up?" Also, Sarah says hi and asks if Ronnie can help with our data table because apparently she likes math. "Apparently I like math," Victoria said, amused. "You do," he said. "And she knows." They turned back toward town. Midway, a pair of headlights slowed beside them. Rebecca's car. Ethan felt the recognition like a chill, then braced. The passenger window slid down. Rebecca leaned across the console, eyes sharp, mouth thinned. The city's brightness clinging to her like a perfume she couldn't quite set down. "Evening." "Hey, Ethan," said neutrally. Her gaze flicked to their joined hands, then back to his face. "So, it's true. You're playing house." Victoria didn't flinch. "We're building one," she said, calm as a lake. Rebecca's eyes cut to her, then softened in a way that was somehow more dangerous. "You're very sure of yourself for someone who parachuted in broke. Everything then decided you wanted to save it." "I broke things," Victoria said evenly. "I'm trying to fix more than I broke." "Uh-huh." Rebecca's attention snapped back to Ethan. "We'll discuss custody this weekend." "Don't make plans." "Lily has a math club meet Saturday morning," Ethan replied, a steel of his own under the words. "We'll work around her life, not ours." Rebecca's jaw ticked. Something in his tone stopped her. She looked at Victoria one more time, eyes narrowing like she was filing the lines of her face into a case folder. Then the window slid up. The car eased away, taillights bleeding red into the dark. They stood a second longer in the wash of the departing engine. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Sorry." "Don't be," Victoria said softly. "I appreciate that she's fierce about Lily. I can live with fierce. I can't live with careless." "Yeah." He squeezed her hand. "Me neither." They picked up Lily from Sarah's front walk where two girls waved wildly like sailors greeting a friendly ship. Ronnie Lily said, barreling into the front seat after a hug, "We need your brain on our scatter plot. Sarah's dad says it looks like a duck." "Let's make it look like a line," Victoria said, laughing. Back home, Lily launched into a breathless play-by-play of a very small drama involving a glue stick, 5 index cards, and a sudden crisis of confidence that was cured by cookies. Ethan watched Victoria listening, really listening at Lily's pace with Lily's delight. He felt something slot into place inside him that had been missing since the day he signed marriage papers with a pen that shook. Not just love, ease. By 9:30, Lily had migrated to the couch with a book, feet tucked under a blanket, eyelashes fluttering toward sleep. Victoria drifted to the sink, rolled up her sleeves, and started rinsing mugs even though he told her he'd do it. "I like this part," she said over her shoulder. "The small ending to a good day." He joined her dish towel in hand. Their shoulders bumped. The rhythm was simple wash, rinse, dry, stack, and the smallness of it felt like a promise longer than speeches. When the last plate clicked into the cabinet, he leaned against the counter and watched her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to tell Lily," he said. "About us. About more." "We can," she said. "When you're ready." He nodded slowly. "Soon." She moved closer, close enough for him to smell the clean citrus of her shampoo and the faint ghost of wood smoke that seemed to cling to them both no matter how many showers separated them from that night in the forest. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "I want to make a life here. Build it slow. Build it right." He touched her cheek with 2 fingers, a gesture as reverent as a prayer. "Then we will." They kissed there in the kitchen, the house breathing around them. It wasn't the frantic kind of kiss that tries to prove anything. It was the patient kind that says, I see you, I'm here, we're home. When they finally pulled apart, Lily was watching from the couch with the unabashed curiosity of a teenager pretending not to be one. So she said, grin lurking, is this like official Ethan? And Victoria glanced at each other, then back at Lily. Official enough that we're going to tell you first when anything changes, Ethan said. And official enough? Victoria added, cheeks pink, that if you want, we can look at dresses this weekend. For that dance! Lily lit up like someone had flipped a switch in her chest. Can we? Yes. Ethan said, laughing at the speed of her excitement. We can. Later. After Lily had climbed the stairs and the house had settled for real this time, Ethan walked Victoria to the door. The night had gone colder. Her breath hung in the porch light like a quiet secret. I'll text when I'm home, she said. Seattle tonight, back tomorrow. Drive safe. He bent-kissed her forehead. Thank you for all of it. She caught his hand squeezed. Thank you for letting me try. He watched her taillights until they were a red comma swallowed by the road, then stood there a long while. Hands in his pockets, stars pricked bright over the dark line of trees. He thought of a ring. He thought of a river. He thought of a life that had room enough for the woman he'd loved, the girl he was raising, and the woman he loved now. The blueprint had changed. The house somehow was stronger. Inside, he turned the porch lock and set his keys in the dish with the little emergency whistle that still lived there, bright orange, ridiculous, faithful. He picked it up, twirled it by its cord, and set it back down carefully, like placing a period at the end of a long sentence. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and spreadsheets and a scatterplot that refused to behave. It would bring the town and its gossip and the steady hum of progress that wasn't quick but was real. It would bring a walk past a jeweler's window and a conversation with a friend who knew metal and memory. Tomorrow would bring the next plank in the bridge. Tonight brought sleep, and the kind of peace that comes when the story finally admits where it's headed. Morning came quietly with the pale gray light of early spring sliding through the curtains. Ethan woke first, his body tuned to the rhythm of responsibility even before the alarm. He lay still for a moment, listening to the house, the tick of the old clock in the hallway, the soft sigh of wind through the eaves, the muffled creak of Lily moving around upstairs. It was the sound of life, steady and imperfect, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the heaviness of dread pressing on his chest the moment he opened his eyes. Downstairs, the coffee maker gurgled to life. He stood at the counter pouring 2 mugs, though only one would be drunk now. Habit. Claire's mug still hung on the hook by the stove, faded sunflowers wrapping the ceramic. He never moved it, couldn't. And yet, when he thought of the future, it was Victoria's laugh. He heard Victoria's hands reaching for a dish towel beside him. Victoria's voice folding into Lily's chatter, like she had always been there. Lily bounded down the stairs, her backpack swinging. Dad. Sarah's dad says the business incubator is hosting an open house today. Can we go after school? Ethan glanced over, surprised. Open house. Yeah, Lily said, eyes bright. They're showing what the new businesses are doing. There's a bakery, a bike repair shop, and some kind of computer place. Sarah said there might be free cookies. Ethan smiled into his coffee. Ah, the real motivation. Lily shrugged, grinning. I mean, cookies and education. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway turned both their heads. Through the window, the familiar Honda appeared. Victoria stepped out carrying a box, her hair tied back, dressed in jeans, and a soft blue sweater that made her look less like the woman who used to dominate boardrooms and more like someone who belonged on his porch. Morning, she called as the door opened. You're early, Ethan said, setting down his mug. Early bird gets the... She hefted the box onto the counter with a grin. Permit approvals. Permit approvals. For the community center, she explained. Signed, sealed, and stamped. We're official. Lily clapped her hands. Does that mean the basketball court too? Victoria leaned down, lowering her voice like it was a state secret. Full size, with new hoops, and a library corner. Lily's squeal was immediate. She bolted upstairs to grab her shoes. Victoria laughed, then straightened her gaze, finding Ethan's. For a beat, there was no paperwork between them. No past. Just the quiet hum of two people who'd walked into something bigger than either of them expected. Ethan cleared his throat. She's more excited about the hoops than the library. She'll thank us later for the books, Victoria said softly. Everyone needs both. When they drove Lily to school, the town was already buzzing. The diner sign flashed open. A couple of construction trucks rattled past toward the site of the community center, and Mrs. Patterson waved from her porch with a watering can in hand. The town was shifting slightly slowly, but enough that people carried hope like it was something they could put in their pockets. After dropping Lily, Victoria asked, "Do you have time to walk the site with me? I want your eye on the foundation before the crew pours tomorrow." He nodded. "Yeah, let's go." The old feed store-turned office stood at the edge of town. Its wide barn doors opened to reveal desks cobbled together from reclaimed wood laptops scattered between jars of nails and half-finished blueprints. It smelled like dust and coffee and sawdust, like possibility. Out back, the community center site stretched across what used to be a weedy lot. Now stakes marked boundaries, trenches for plumbing were dug, and the hum of a backhoe echoed against the trees. Ethan squatted near the foundation lines, running his hand over the chalk markings. "So far looks square, but tell your crew to double-check when they set rebar. It only takes a half-inch mistake here to make a wall crooked later." Victoria crouched beside him, listening like a student. Noted. "See, this is why I need you. The details that don't show up in spreadsheets," he smirked. "Not exactly glamorous. Neither is a house falling down because someone didn't check rebar." She smiled. "Details build trust." They walked the perimeter together, their boots crunching in the gravel. Workers nodded to Ethan as they passed a mark of respect he hadn't felt in years, being looked at not just as labor, but as someone steering the project. Midway through, Victoria slowed her voice lower. "Ethan, I've been thinking." "That's dangerous," he teased. She shot him a look but continued. "I want to make Cedar Valley more than just projects. I want it to be an anchor. A way to prove development doesn't have to mean destruction." He nodded slowly. "Sounds right. But it won't be easy. I don't want easy." She met his eyes. "I want right." The air between them tightened, but it wasn't heavy. It was alive like the charge before a storm. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Call me when you can. It's about Lily." His chest tightened. He showed Victoria the screen. "I need to check this." She nodded quickly. He stepped aside, answering. "Mrs. Patterson." Her voice was kind, but edged with worry. "Ethan, nothing serious. Just Lily got upset during science today. Another student teased her about you and Victoria. Called you a gold digger." Ethan closed his eyes, anger curling hot. "Is she okay?" She left the room crying. "She's with me now. I thought you should know." He glanced back at Victoria, who was watching with quiet concern. His knuckles whitened on the phone. "Thank you," he said tightly. "I'll come get her." When he hung up, Victoria touched his arm. "What happened, kids?" He said, his voice sharp with restrained fury. "Someone called me a gold digger. She defended me. It got to her." Victoria's face fell. "Oh, Ethan." He took a long breath, fighting the urge to storm back to the school and demand names. "She's strong, but she shouldn't have to be." "She shouldn't." Victoria agreed. Then softly, "Let's go get her." The drive was quiet except for the hum of the road. When they reached the school, Lily stood by the office door, arms crossed, eyes red. She looked up when Ethan approached, trying to be brave, but the crack in her voice betrayed her. "They said you only like her because she's rich," she blurted, glaring at Victoria, as if daring her to deny it. Ethan knelt, pulling her into his arms. "Lily, listen to me. I don't care about money. Not hers, not anyone's. You and me. That's everything. That's all I need." Lily sniffed, leaning into him. "But what if people keep saying things?" "Then we'll keep reminding them they're wrong," he said firmly. Victoria crouched beside them, her voice gentle but unwavering. "Lily, I don't care what they say either. Your dad doesn't need me for money. He saved me when I had nothing, when I was hanging upside down literally. I'm the lucky one here. Not him. Lily studied her face, searching for cracks. Finally, her shoulders softened, though her lips still pouted stubbornly. You better mean that. I do, Victoria whispered. With everything I have. For the first time that day, Lily allowed herself a tiny smile, and Ethan, holding them both in the narrow hallway of the school, realized this was what building a family looked like: messy, imperfect, but stronger than the noise outside. The afternoon light was slipping toward gold by the time they left the school. Lily wedged herself into the back seat, arms folded, but her head resting against the window in a way that said the worst of the storm had passed. Ethan adjusted the rear-view mirror just enough to keep an eye on her reflection. Her jaw still set stubbornly, her eyes still rimmed pink, but beneath it all he saw the same resilience that had carried her through every loss. Victoria sat quietly in the passenger seat, her hands folded tight in her lap. She wasn't usually quiet, her mind always spun ideas, her voice eager to share. But now her silence felt deliberate, heavy with thought. Ethan knew she was carrying more than just her own shame. She was carrying his daughter's hurt, and that cut deeper than anything else. When they pulled into the driveway, Lily bolted straight inside, dropping her backpack in the hall with a thud before heading upstairs. The slam of her bedroom door echoed through the house. Ethan lingered by the truck, pinching the bridge of his nose. Damn it, he muttered. Victoria stood beside him, the cool air tugging at her sweater. She'll come around. He shook his head. She shouldn't have to come around. She's 13. She shouldn't have to defend us against whispers. She defended you because she loves you, Victoria said softly. That's not weakness. That's strength. He exhaled, watching his breath curl in the chill. Strength she shouldn't have to use this way. Inside the house felt too quiet. The photograph on the refrigerator of the three of them on the porch suddenly seemed fragile, like glass that might crack under the wrong kind of pressure. Ethan walked to the kitchen table and set his keys down harder than he meant to. Victoria followed, hesitant. Ethan. He turned his face taut. I knew this would happen. Rebecca's probably smirking right now, telling herself she predicted all this. And now, Lily's the one paying for it. Rebecca doesn't get to write your life anymore, Victoria said, steel in her tone. He laughed bitterly. Doesn't she? Every time Lily comes home crying because of something Rebecca planted, it feels like she still holds the pen. Victoria closed the space between them, her eyes sharp. Then take the pen back. Write it yourself. Ethan blinked, caught by the fierceness in her voice. She wasn't just defending herself, she was defending him too. Before he could answer, a soft knock came from upstairs. Lily's door opened slowly. She shuffled down, clutching a notebook to her chest. Her face was calmer now, though her eyes still held the weight of questions. Dad? She asked, her voice small. Yeah, sweetheart. Do you love her? Lily's eyes flicked to Victoria, then back to him. Really love her? Or is it complicated? The question sliced through him. Ethan glanced at Victoria, whose expression was open, vulnerable, waiting. He turned back to his daughter and knelt so they were eye to eye. Yes, he said firmly. I love her, not because of what she has, not because of what she can do, because she makes me better, because she listens, because she makes this house feel alive again. That's the truth. Lily's grip on the notebook loosened. She looked at Victoria, studying her face like she could measure honesty by how still she held herself. Victoria crouched too, her voice low. Lily, I'm not here to replace anyone. Not your mom, not the memories you hold on to. I'm here because I care about both of you. Because I want to build something real with you, not just with him. For a long beat, Lily was silent. Then she extended the notebook. I was working on a project, she admitted. It's about family trees. I didn't know if I should put you on it. Victoria took the notebook carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped it open. Drawn in colored pencil was a tree with broad branches. Ethan's name, Claire's name, and Lily's were etched firmly, but off to one side, faintly penciled, was a question mark beside Victoria's name. Ethan's chest tightened. I didn't know if it was okay, Lily whispered, but I want it to be. The air seemed to still around them. Victoria blinked fast, fighting tears, and then looked straight at Lily. I would be honored to be on your tree. Only if you want me there. Only if you choose it. Lily nodded slowly, the corner of her mouth lifting. Then I choose it. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He pulled them both into a hug, his arms wrapping around the two most important people in his life. For a moment, all the noise, Rebecca's criticisms, the town's gossip, the whispers of classrooms faded. Later, as Lily worked at the kitchen table, coloring the branches of her family tree, Ethan and Victoria stood by the sink. He murmured, "She just gave us her blessing, didn't she?" Victoria smiled through tears. "She did. And now I need to be brave enough to give her more than questions and half promises." He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against something small and square. For weeks he'd carried the velvet box waiting, wondering. Victoria noticed her eyes widening. "Ethan?" He closed his hand around it. "Not yet. Not tonight. Soon. When the moment feels right." She touched his arm gently. "Whenever it comes, I'll be ready." And in the glow of the kitchen light, with Lily humming softly as she colored her tree, Ethan realized that maybe, just maybe, their roots were already growing together. By late afternoon, the old mill block felt alive again. Strings of warm bulbs zigzagged the alley, glowing like captured fireflies. Hand-lettered signs leaned against brick bike repair. Riverstone Metals. Milltown Bakery. Inside the repurposed feed store, Cedar Valley's not quite an office, not quite a community center yet, tables were covered with paper tablecloths and bowls of cookies that steamed up their plastic lids. Lily walked 2 steps ahead, her ponytail bouncing, already craning her neck for Sarah. Ethan followed with paper cups stacked in one hand. Beside him, Victoria balanced a tray of sample brownies like a waitress who'd only just learned to trust her elbows. "You really bribed the town with chocolate," he murmured. "It's stakeholder engagement," she said deadpan. "Also bribery." He laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound startled him how easy it came. The room smelled like coffee and sawdust. The concrete floor kept a memory of winter in it, cool through the soles of Ethan's boots. Someone had set up a little speaker in the corner and put on old Motown quietly, the bass line thumping like a steady, forgiving heart. "Mr. Callahan." A voice boomed. Carlos Medina gray ponytail forearms like bridge cables waved them over from a folding table crowded with bike chains and tiny screwdrivers. "Your girl needs a tune-up, bring it to me. Half price for math geniuses." Lily grinned. "I accept." Sarah's dad, Tim Collins, appeared with a smile that looked a decade younger than it had 3 months ago. "We got the microloan," he told Ethan like a kid who'd passed a driving test. "Equipment's coming Tuesday." "I actually slept last night. That's a miracle," Victoria said warmly. "Or just a payment plan," Tim replied, shaking his head in disbelief. "Either way, thank you." Ethan watched the thank you land on Victoria's face like a benediction. She didn't deflect it with a joke. She just absorbed it, put a hand to her heart for a beat, and nodded. The bakery table drew them next, ginger snap something lemon, a tray labeled almost brownies, which made Lily snort. "Why, almost?" She asked the woman behind the table, a retired nurse named Dee, who'd lived on their block since Lily was in kindergarten. "Because they're always almost done when I take them out," Dee admitted. "I get impatient." "Try one." They did. They were perfect. "Okay," Victoria whispered, lips powdered with sugar. "Consider me bought." Ethan was about to agree when a ghost from a different life slid into his peripheral vision, adjusting a tie that didn't belong in a building with rafters. Marcus. Not the harried headset-wearing Marcus of quarterly calls. A different version tie, loosened eyes, soft around the edges, a paper plate balanced in one hand like a peace flag. "Before you throw a cookie at my head," he said to Victoria. "I come in peace." She blinked. "You found us. Small town," he said. "You can follow the smell of hope and carbs." Ethan stepped slightly forward without deciding to. "What do you want?" Marcus. Marcus met his gaze squarely. "A job." "Here. If you'll have me, you quit." Victoria asked disbelief, and something like relief braided in her voice. "Walked," he said. "After the boardroom brawl you choreographed, staying felt like working for the wrong movie. I told them I was following the star to a better script." "You can't live without theatrical metaphors, can you?" she murmured. "Only when I mean them." He set the plate down, suddenly earnest. "Look, I spent 10 years optimizing your calendar, which is to say, I spent 10 years watching you sprint away from yourself. I know what a version of you looks like that sleeps. That one's here. I want to make sure she doesn't drown in good intentions and excel." Ethan didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth loosened a fraction. "What would you even do here?" "We pay with cookies and the occasional thank you. I'll take payment and outcomes," Marcus said. "Also, I'm very good at grants procurement and telling mayors no while making them think it was their idea." "Useful," Victoria murmured. She looked to Ethan, not asking permission exactly, but asking alignment. "Thoughts?" Ethan studied the man's posture, his eyes the way he didn't flinch from pushback. He thought of rebar of stress points. "Trial. 2 months," he said. "We build a trust that isn't made of email." Marcus nodded as if he'd been waiting for exactly that. "Deal." Across the room, Mayor Harris materialized like a plot twist suit that didn't fit quite right. Smile that tried to. He clapped as if he liked the sound. "Look at this. Prosperity." "Careful," Ethan murmured. "You'll jinx it." The mayor chuckled, then dropped his voice enough to be heard only by the adults in earshot. "Speaking of luck, your community center costs just grew teeth. Concrete's up 9%. Rebar 5. I got a call 10 minutes ago from supply." He lifted both hands as if to ward off incoming blame. "We're going to be 200,000 short by breaking ground." 200,000. The number hit the table and sat there like a new anvil. Ethan's mind did that thing it had been trained to do, lay out the problem in planks. "We can't cut structural. Code won't let us. We can phase interior finishes. Delay glass, choose standard fixtures. Volunteers can paint. But we still need cash." "How fast?" Victoria asked, already mapping. Mayor Harris winced. "Grant committee meets end of month. If we miss rebar now, we lose the crew window and slide the whole schedule into winter." Marcus cleared his throat. Eyes bright. "There's a state program, Rural Community Revive, rolling emergency grants for cost shocks tied to supply volatility. I wrote 2 of those last year for counties that couldn't pave because asphalt prices went feral." He looked at his watch. Deadlines midnight. Decisions in 7 days. 7 days, Ethan repeated. "We can hold the crew for a week if we bribe them with D's almost brownies and coffee." "I prefer the lemon," the mayor said faintly out of his depth already. Victoria had her laptop open before the sentence ended. Marcus outline. Ethan outcomes and human stories, mayor letters from council, school, church league if we can get them. Lily. "Where is she?" Here came a breathless voice. Lily sprinted over from the bike table, crumbs dusting her hoodie. "Spreadsheet duty," Victoria said. "Build me a simple cost delta with a graph so even a distracted politician can understand." Lily's face lit like the bulb string. On it. She grabbed Sarah, who grabbed Sarah's dad, who had Excel on an ancient laptop like an heirloom, and suddenly a table had turned into a command center. They pulled the folding chairs close. Dee brought a new tray of cookies and unasked lined up paper cups along the table's edge like chess pieces. The Motown track slid into Otis Redding. Someone turned it down and called their cousin on the planning commission. Text chains multiplied like friendly vines. Ethan watched the room shift around him. This was the part most people never saw, the unglamorous hour where a good idea needed muscle. He took a breath, reached for a pen, and began to write the outcomes narrative in his own hand on a legal pad because sometimes ink carried conviction, a keyboard couldn't. He wrote about the seniors who walked laps at the grocery because there was nowhere else to go and how a gym could give them winters without loneliness. He wrote about the middle school team practicing free throws on asphalt, dappled with oil stains, and how a sprung wood court could turn ankles into confidence. He wrote about Lily and Sarah sharing a calculator and a dream, how they'd be the ones leading workshops in the library corner for kids who didn't know yet that they loved numbers. "Make it specific," Victoria said softly, reading over his shoulder. "Write a name. A smell. Grants hate abstraction." He did. He wrote the smell of popcorn at youth league games that hadn't existed in a decade. He wrote the name of the kid who would dribble in a squeaky pair of donated shoes and realize he could go somewhere bigger than the county line. Marcus typed like a pianist. Lily built the graph, chewing a pencil eraser, then stood up and showed it to the room, a simple before/after with a line that lifted hope, not just numbers. Mayor Harris called the county commissioner and learned that if they had 3 letters before 10, they'd go to the top of the review. Tim Collins scribbled D-wrote in beautiful cursive. Carlos added grease-smudged bullet points about keeping teens off the street and in the shop learning to tension a chain. At 6:30, the sun slid behind the mill and took the warmth with it. Someone brought in a space heater that groaned like an old dog. Jackets went back on. The room held. At 7:15, a string of kids wandered in after practice hair damp, asking if the center would have a vending machine. "It'll have a fruit bowl," Victoria said, not missing a beat. Groans, then laughter, then a compromise fruit, and a vending machine that wouldn't ruin a coach's day. At 8, an out-of-town reporter poked her head through the door. Hair shellacked, smile sharp. "Is this the rebrand after the Cedar Falls fiasco?" she asked, microphone peeking out of her purse like a spy. Victoria didn't look up from the budget tab she was adjusting. "It's a community writing their own story," she said. "You can quote me or you can help stack chairs." The reporter left. The chairs remained. By 9, the packet felt real. By 10, it felt good. By 11, the room was down to 10 people and 1 dog who had wandered in, curled under the table, and started snoring. The graph was clear. The letters were heartfelt without begged pity. Marcus had folded the numbers into a narrative that even the cynic in Ethan wanted to believe. "Read it," Victoria said. Out loud. One more time. Ethan did voice steady, the words moving through him like a prayer he didn't know he knew. When he finished, no one clapped. They just nodded, a circle of tired heads, the kind of approval that means, "Yes, that's us. Send it," Lily said, bouncing on her toes despite the hour. Marcus clicked. Sent. Silence poured into the moment after the send like warm water into a cold sink. The kind of quiet that makes you notice small sounds, the heater's rumble paper edges settling a far-off train. Victoria closed the laptop and looked around at the faces, lined, freckled, hopeful, skeptical, open. "Thank you," she said, and her voice wobbled just enough to make Ethan's throat pinch. "Whatever happens next week, this is already what I wanted to build." The crowd trickled out, promises tossed over shoulders. "I'll be here at 8. I can bring a thermos. I've got a cousin with a cement mixer if yours bails." The bulbs outside hummed. The night had gone knife cold. Stars punched through it like brass tacks. "Go home," Ethan told Lily, hooking an arm around her shoulders. "Brush your teeth with that special grant-writing toothpaste." She rolled her eyes happy again. "It tastes like victory." "Gross," he said, grinning. "Bed." She hugged Victoria on her way out, quick and fierce. "Thanks, Ronnie, always." When the door swung shut behind Lily, the room felt bigger and smaller at once. Marcus took the hint and gathered cups, humming under his breath. "I'll lock up. You two walk," he suggested, not looking at them. "There's something about the river after a good fight that resets the air." They stepped into the alley, their breaths making small clouds. The world had gone quiet in that way small towns do after 10. Every sound magnified a lone car, a kitchen light snapping off a dog's collar jingling as it settled under a porch. They didn't head for the river. Not yet. Ethan gestured toward a storefront 2 doors down. Instead, river stone metals, hand-painted in gold leaf. Anvil silhouette in the window. Inside, a lamp burned on a bench bathing the little shop in warm amber. "Trust me," he said. He knocked with his knuckles on the glass. The door opened to a man in a leather apron with silver dust in his beard. "You the Callahan who left me a voicemail?" he asked, eyeing Ethan with craftsman's appraisal. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. He glanced at Victoria, who looked amused, curious, affectionate, all at once. I wanted to ask about a ring." The jeweler's gaze flicked to Victoria and back, reading the rest. "Come in." The shop smelled like metal and heat and a touch of citrus oil. Trays glinted without shouting. On a corkboard, rough sketches were pinned bands settings, the arc of a design from idea to weight in the hand. "I don't want flashy," Ethan said. "I want honest." "Honest I can do," the jeweler said. "Material." Ethan pulled a small pouch from his pocket, like a man revealing a secret. Inside, a thin gold chain and a tiny ring that once lived on a young hand. It was Claire's, he said the name, reverent, not raw. "I was thinking, melt it." Make something new that still carries what it carried. Victoria's hand found his. He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath until her fingers wrapped around his, and he exhaled. "We can do that," the jeweler said softly. He lifted the little ring with tweezers, careful, respectful. Stone Ethan thought of the story he wanted the circle to tell. One small diamond and two smaller stones, one for Lily. One for who made us who we are. The jeweler nodded, already sketching lines, quick and sure. He turned the pad so Ethan could see. Simple band, diamond centered, two small stones flanking set low. Nothing trend chasing. Everything time could bless. "It's beautiful," Victoria whispered, eyes shining. "It's us." 2 weeks if I rush it, the jeweler said. 1 if I don't sleep. 2, Ethan said, smiling. "We're building a center. You should sleep." They left the shop with a receipt that felt like a promise and a warmth in Ethan's chest that had nothing to do with heaters. The air bit at their cheeks. The river hummed into the dark, a sound more felt than heard. Ethan, Victoria said as they walked, voice low, awed. "You didn't have to use Claire's ring." "I did," he said simply. "Because love isn't a wall you knock down to build another. It's a house you add a room to. I want you to live in the same address as my past. That's the only way future makes sense to me." She stopped under the halo of one brittle street lamp and kissed him once, slow and steady. When she pulled back, there were tears on her lashes and laughter in her mouth. "I love the house we're building." He rested his forehead against hers. "Me too." Their phones buzzed in tandem. Marcus. Forgot to mention state portal hiccups sometimes at midnight. I hit submit again, just in case. "We're in. Sleep. Tomorrow we work." Ethan slid the phone back into his pocket and looked down the dark street toward the line of cottonwoods that marked the river's curve. He felt the shape of the ring-to-be in his imagination. He felt the tug of work that meant something of a town choosing itself. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." The house waited, lamplight spilling warm through the curtains, Lily already asleep with a book splayed across her chest, the emergency whistle a bright little laugh in the bowl by the keys. Tomorrow would bring answers. Or more questions. Both probably. But tonight held enough. Morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only follows a night of hard work and unspoken vows. Frost laced the grass, glittering under the first edge of sun. Ethan stepped onto the porch with his coffee, cheap grounds brewed strong enough to stand a spoon upright, but today it tasted like something more, like resolve. Lily bounded down the stairs a few minutes later, hair still tangled from sleep, notebook in hand. She waved it like a flag. "Dad, they posted the state portal results," Marcus texted me. "It says under review." "That's good, right?" Ethan smiled, ruffling her hair. "It means we're still in the race. That's good enough for today." Behind them, the door creaked. Victoria appeared, a scarf pulled snug against the chill. She wasn't wearing the armor of business suits, just jeans and one of Ethan's old flannel shirts, the sleeves rolled up. The sight of her standing there, ordinary and unguarded, sent something steady through his chest. "Breakfast?" she asked, holding up a grocery bag. "And before you say anything, yes, I cooked, or well, attempted." Inside the kitchen smelled of scrambled eggs and slightly burnt toast. Lily wrinkled her nose, then laughed. "She's worse than you, Dad." Victoria threw a napkin at her. "Critics get cereal." They sat down together, and for a few precious minutes it felt almost normal. A family without footnotes. A father, a daughter, and a woman who was daring to rewrite herself from scratch. But reality has a way of knocking. Halfway through breakfast, Ethan's phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize, but one that carried the sharp edge of corporate insistence. He answered anyway. "This is Ethan. Mr. Callahan, this is Harold Knox, interim chair at Hale Technologies. I'm calling because Miss Hale has submitted her resignation. We need to confirm whether you played any role in influencing her decision." Ethan's jaw tightened. She made her choice. Knox's voice cooled. Her departure cost shareholders tens of millions overnight. If it turns out she was unduly pressured, Victoria plucked the phone from Ethan's hand, her tone slicing. "Harold, if you're desperate for a scapegoat, find a mirror. I resigned because your board was willing to bulldoze families to boost margins." Ethan didn't pressure me. He reminded me I had a conscience, something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you. She ended the call with a crisp tap and set the phone on the table. Ethan blinked at her. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Her eyes softened. No more lies. No more half-lives. If they want to come after me, let them. They'll find me here not hiding in some glass tower. Lily's gaze darted between them wide with pride. You sounded like a superhero. Victoria chuckled, though her hands trembled faintly. Trust me, I'm terrified. But sometimes you have to be scared and still do the thing. Later that morning, they drove into town for a community update. The feed store turned office buzzed again this time, with reporters sniffing around the edges. Victoria squared her shoulders as cameras turned questions firing like buckshot. Why did you resign? Is Cedar Valley just damage control? Are you and Mr. Callahan? She held up a hand. One question she said firmly. Why don't you ask the people here what this project means? Interview them. Not me. The cameras hesitated, uncertain. Then Dee from the bakery stepped forward, her apron still dusted with flour. It means my grandkids don't have to leave town to find jobs, Carlos added. It means kids fix bikes instead of getting into trouble. Tim Collins, with grease still under his nails, said, It means dignity. It means staying. One by one, voices rose a chorus the cameras couldn't ignore. The reporters scribbled furiously, but the story had already shifted from scandal to survival. Ethan watched from the sidelines, his arms crossed, pride swelling until it pressed against his ribs. Victoria stood in the middle of it, no longer the CEO whose name belonged on ticker boards. She was just a woman listening to her neighbors letting their words fill the space she'd once occupied with jargon. When the crowd thinned, she came to him, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. That felt better than any earnings call I've ever given. Because this time it mattered, Ethan said quietly. That night, Lily worked late on her family tree project. At the top, she scrawled Callahan across the trunk. Beneath it, her name Ethan's Claire's. And this time, without hesitation, Victoria's inked bold, not penciled tentative. When she showed them, Ethan's throat closed. Victoria covered her mouth with her hand. See, Lily said, we're already a team. And for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to believe it. Not just hoped, believed. The next 7 days crawled and raced all at once. Each morning, Ethan woke to the same gnawing question, did the grant committee decide yet? And each night he went to bed with no answer. Life filled the waiting. The community center site was buzzing with volunteers measuring tape, snapping through the frosty air, laughter rising as neighbors painted signs that read, Future home of us in thick blue strokes. Ethan spent his days helping lay out lumber piles, his nights balancing accounts with a pencil stub. Victoria threw herself into logistics. Meetings with contractors, negotiations with suppliers, even long calls with skeptical council members. And when the calls ended, she cooked clumsy dinners in Ethan's kitchen and laughed when Lily teased her mercilessly. Lily, for her part, became the unofficial mascot of Cedar Valley Development. She set up a whiteboard in the corner of the feed store, tallying volunteer hours with colored markers, her handwriting looping across the board like vines. Each tally mark was a promise that people still believed. But beneath the rhythm of progress, a low hum of anxiety lingered. They all knew without the grant the center would stall. On the 7th day, the email arrived. It landed in Marcus's inbox first. His phone buzzed loud on the feed store table where they'd been working through receipts. He read the subject line, froze, and then looked up slowly. Well, Ethan demanded. Marcus swallowed. Approved. The room erupted. Dee dropped a tray of cookies on the floor and didn't even care. Carlos whooped so loud the rafters shook. Lily jumped into Ethan's arms, nearly knocking him over, while Sarah spun in dizzy circles until she collapsed in giggles. Victoria covered her face with her hands. When she lowered them, tears streaked her cheeks, but her smile glowed. 200,000, Marcus confirmed, coming straight into the town's veins. Ethan set Lily down, his voice breaking as he said it aloud. We did it. No, they had. A town that had been written off a father who'd nearly given up a woman who'd once only spoken in boardroom metrics. Together, they'd pulled it off. That evening, the feed store transformed into a celebration. tables lined with crock pots, guitars strummed by teenagers, toddlers racing between folding chairs. Someone brewed spiced cider that filled the air with cinnamon and clove. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching it unfold. He caught sight of Victoria near the fire pit outside, her hair glowing in the flames' light. Lily by her side, telling her a joke that made them both laugh until they doubled over. Something inside him shifted then, an understanding clear and quiet. This wasn't temporary, this wasn't fragile. This was his life now, his family, his future. Later, when the fire had burned low and the crowd had drifted home, Ethan and Victoria lingered on the porch of his house. Lily had gone to bed exhausted and proud. The night was cold, stars scattered like a million small truths overhead. "I've been carrying something," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. Victoria's breath caught when he pulled out the velvet box. She stared at it, then at him, as if daring not to hope. He opened it slowly. The ring gleamed simple and strong, Claire's melted gold, a diamond in the center, two smaller stones flanking it. Past, present, future. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan." He knelt not with a grand gesture, but with a steady heart. "I don't want to move on from Claire. I want to move forward with you, with Lily. I want a family that honors what we've lost and still dares to build what's next. So Victoria Hale, will you marry me?" For a moment, silence stretched, filled only by the whisper of the wind through the trees. Then she knelt too, tears spilling freely, her hands covering his. "Yes," she whispered. Then stronger laughing through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit like it had been waiting all along. Above them, the stars didn't change, but the world did. The morning after the proposal felt different even before Ethan opened his eyes. The air in the house carried a hush, not heavy, but full like the silence before a symphony begins. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of what had happened the night before settle into his bones. Down the hall, he heard the faint sound of Lily singing under her breath as she brushed her teeth, an off-key hum of some pop song she'd played on repeat all week. The ordinary sound folded into the extraordinary truth. Their family was no longer just a dream limping forward. It was a house being built plank by plank, name by name. Victoria emerged from the guest room wearing one of Ethan's sweatshirt sleeves, swallowing her hands. The ring on her finger caught the early light and threw it across the hallway wall. She caught Ethan staring and raised an eyebrow. "You're going to burn a hole in me if you keep looking like that." "Can't help it," he murmured. Over breakfast, burnt toast again because their cheap toaster refused to cooperate. Lily spotted the ring properly for the first time. She froze mid-bite, her spoon of cereal dripping milk onto the table. "Wait! Wait!" Ethan and Victoria exchanged a quick glance. Lily squealed so loud the windows rattled. "You did it! You actually did it!" She jumped up, knocking over her chair, and flung her arms around both of them at once. Best day ever. Best day ever. Her joy was contagious. Ethan laughed until his chest hurt. Victoria laughed until tears sprang to her eyes. For the first time in years, the kitchen was full of sound that wasn't worry, wasn't loss. It was pure, dizzy happiness. The news spread faster than Ethan expected. By noon, half the town knew. By evening, everyone did. Neighbors dropped by with pies, bottles of wine, even an old quilt from Dee, who insisted every newly engaged couple needed one. "You'll thank me when the power goes out in January," she said, pressing it into their arms. But with joy came the inevitable outside noise. A sleek car rolled up the driveway just after sunset. Marcus stepped out, coat slung over his shoulder. His usual smirk was muted. "Congratulations, lovebirds," he said, and his eyes, though mischievous, held real warmth. "But brace yourselves. The media's sniffing again. They think this town is the redemption arc of the decade." Victoria sighed, rubbing her temples. "Of course they do." Ethan felt the anger rise, protective and sharp. "They're not turning this into a circus. Not our town. Not Lily." "We can manage it," Marcus assured. "But it'll take a careful line openness without exploitation. Transparency without selling your soul." Victoria turned to Ethan. "Are you ready for that?" He thought of Lily's wide-eyed joy that morning, of the ring glinting in firelight of the community center they'd fought for. He nodded slowly. "I don't care what they say about me, But if they go after her, he tilted his head toward Lily's closed bedroom door. We end it. No story's worth her peace. Marcus nodded. Fair. That night when the house was quiet again, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch wrapped in Dee's quilt. The stars stretched endless above them, and the cold air smelled of wood smoke and pine. You know, Victoria whispered, leaning into his shoulder, when I used to picture my future, it was all stock tickers and boardrooms. Now I can't picture it without chipped coffee mugs and this porch. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Then we're both finally seen straight. Inside the lamp in Lily's room burned late into the night. She was sketching her pencil, scratching across the page. At the top she wrote in block letters, Our Future. Below she drew the three of them standing in front of a building with a hand-painted sign, Cedar Valley Community Center. Around it, smiling families, kids with basketballs, seniors with walking sticks. She shaded the windows so they glowed like they were already alive with light. For the first time since Claire's passing, Ethan felt a truth anchor in him like bedrock. His life wasn't just survival anymore. It was beginning again. And the beginning was beautiful. The day of the community center's groundbreaking dawned. Knife bright and cold. The kind of morning that makes breath look like smoke and hope look visible. Frost glazed the field where weeds used to shoulder out the light. Now there were stakes in the ground, strings snapped taut. A yellow excavator idling like a sleeping beast. Shovels leaned against a sawhorse, their blades polished and ribboned. Kids in oversized hard hats chased each other in crooked circles, their laughter puffing white in the air. Ethan arrived early, with a thermos and a stack of paper cups. He set them on a folding table someone had dressed with a checked cloth and a vase of pine branches. From the street, trucks rolled past contractors, volunteers, neighbors who had no reason to be here except that it felt wrong not to be. Victoria stepped out of the Honda wearing boots and a navy pea coat, cheeks pink from the wind. The ring caught a ragged band of sunlight and threw it back in a clean bolt. She saw Ethan watching and reached for his hand without needing to ask. Their fingers fit the way they had from the first, like the town had been waiting for this grip, this binding. Where's Lily? She asked. Bribing Dee for the first batch of cocoa. Ethan nodded toward the feed store. She promised to share if I didn't make a speech. You're making a speech, Victoria said, smiling. Even if it's only 10 words, he groaned. 11, but only because it's you. Marcus hustled across the gravel like a general late to roll call scarf flying clipboard under his arm. We have press, he announced as though reporting a weather front. Friendly enough, but they'll look for a story shaped like ghosts. I'll keep the perimeter. He scanned the site. Where's the Inspector Ashers over by the compactor, Ethan said. Trying to look unimpressed. Good, Marcus replied. He's happiest when unimpressed. The mayor arrived, suit collar turned up against the wind, followed by council members who looked relieved to be standing somewhere that smelled like earth and diesel instead of the inside of a meeting. Dee parked with a trunk full of muffins. Carlos biked in, balancing a box of donated gloves on his handlebars. Tim brought a battery speaker and the world's oldest playlist, Springsteen. Then Otis, then Dolly, like a blessing from 3 different angels. And then Rebecca's car slid to the curb. She got out slowly, hands thrust into her coat pockets, face empty of the usual combat. Ethan felt the old bristle rise and forced his shoulders to loosen. Lily spotted her first and ran over, skidding to a stop 2 feet away, uncertain. Hi, Rebecca, said voice careful. Hey, Ethan answered. He glanced at Victoria, who moved closer, not as a shield, but as a fact. He took her hand, didn't hide it. Rebecca's eyes flicked to the ring, then lifted to Victoria's face. A long second passed. The wind pushed at their coats. I came to say congratulations, Rebecca said at last. And I'm sorry. She looked at Ethan. I've been waiting for you to fail long enough to prove myself right. It wasn't about Lily. It was about me. That's ugly to admit. But there it is. Ethan swallowed. The frost made his next breath sting. Thank you, he said quietly, for saying it. She nodded, steadying. I'll file to amend the custody schedule, she went on. Make it simpler, fewer exchanges, less performance. Her mouth tugged almost a smile. I still reserve the right to teach Lily to use commas correctly. You and Mrs. Patterson can form a union, Ethan said, and the smallest laugh slipped out of him. Rebecca turned to Victoria. I don't trust Easy, she said, but I can recognize what Lily looks like when she's safe. She looks like that more lately. A beat. If you ever hurt her, I will set the sky on fire. That seems fair, Victoria said, not flinching. I won't. Another beat, and the three of them were no longer a triangle of old arguments, but something complicated and surprisingly humane. Rebecca squeezed Lily's shoulder, pressed a quick kiss to her hair, and moved off to join the cluster near the coffee. Okay, Marcus said, exhaling like a man who'd held breath for a month. Plot twist resolved. Who's ready to move dirt? Not yet. Asher, the inspector called, lifting his clipboard. He had a face like a skeptical uncle. Your rebar tally's short, 3 bundles. Ethan's stomach dropped. It can't be. Delivery was signed and the drivers stuck behind a jackknifed cattle truck. On 27, Marcus finished reading his phone. You can't make this up. We don't need rebar to take a photo with shovels, the mayor stage whispered, already positioning himself for history. Ethan shook his head. We're not faking it. We're building it. He turned to Carlos. You still know the scrapyard foreman? Carlos grinned, already texting. I know a guy who owes me a favor the size of a frame set. Tim Victoria said, pointing toward the feed store. See if the incubator's fabrication guy can loan us caps and ties. We can pre-stage the mats while we wait. And Midi asked, hands on hips. Deploy muffins, Marcus said. Morale is a structural element. For 20 minutes, the site became a choreography of problem solving. Cars peeled out. Calls were made. The inspector pretended not to be impressed, and failed. Kids carted stray rocks away from the line chalk. The excavator idled and then cut its engine as if waiting for the cue in a play it wanted to get right. Through it all, the cameras watched and found a different story than the one they'd come for. Not scandal or spectacle. A town catching its own weight. The truck from the scrapyard arrived with a clatter and a triumphant honk. Carlos whooped. The driver hopped down, cheeks red from the cold. My boss says I'm a fool, he announced, but my boss doesn't see kids in hard hats. Load's yours. Asher checked the bundles, then made a note. Sufficient, he said, which was inspector for praise. Ethan clapped the man on the shoulder. Thank you. When it was finally time, the crowd gathered along the string line. The mayor cleared his throat theatrically. Marcus turned the music down. Lily sidled up to Ethan and tugged his sleeve. Can I start it? She asked, eyes bright. How, he asked, genuinely curious. She dug in her pocket and brought out the small, bright orange emergency whistle from the bowl by the keys, its plastic ridiculous against all this metal and intention. She held it up, grinning. Day 1, you told me this means choose. Today, we choose to begin. Victoria's breath caught. Ethan's did too. Together, he said. Together, Lily echoed. Lily put the whistle to her lips and blew. The sound was thin, piercing, joyful as a dare. Heads turned. The dog from the bakery wagged. Someone cheered. In the second after the note faded, the excavator's engine caught and the operator dipped the bucket into the soil with a clean ceremonial bite. Applause tumbled over itself. Cameras clicked. The mayor got his photo with a shovel. So did Asher, to his own amusement. Dee loaned her apron to a toddler who insisted on digging. And then Ethan stepped forward, palms sweating, and did the thing he'd promised not to do. 10 words, he said, voice carrying clean over the wind. We keep what matters and build what we've been missing. He paused. Eyes on the faces in front of him, their faces. He added the 11th. Together. It wasn't eloquent. It was true. Which is better. The ceremony became work in the way the best ceremonies do. People stayed. Rebar was cut and tied. Forms were squared. Volunteers took turns on the compactor and laughed at how it rattled their bones. A teenager practiced free throws with a crumpled paper cup and a trash can, every shot met with exaggerated cheers. Somewhere in there, the reporter from the city put down her microphone and picked up a shovel. No one commented. It just made sense. When the light slid warm and gold across the frames and the shadows stretched long, Ethan walked the perimeter with Asher one last time. You built this right, Asher said, pen tapping his clipboard. Keep building it that way. We will, Ethan said. He found Victoria by the sawhorses, talking with a retired teacher about the book list for the library corner. Her cheeks were wind-burned hair escaping her hat. Joy obvious as sky. He slipped an arm around her, and she leaned into him like she'd practiced the move all her life. "I have to tell you something," she said, soft under the noise. "It's stupid, and it shouldn't matter, and it matters anyway." "Tell me," he said. When the day comes, I want to take your name." Her eyes flicked to his. "Not because the old one embarrasses me. Because this is the name of the life I chose." He swallowed the answer easy. "Then take it." She smiled. "I will." Behind them, Lily and Sarah chased each other along the chalk-lined sneakers, skidding laughter, high and delighted. Rebecca stood with Mrs. Patterson, both of them watching with identical teacher faces, the look that mixes protectiveness and pride, with a readiness to intervene if anyone tries to cut in line for hot chocolate. The sun dipped, the cold sharpened. Work paused, not finished, but firmly begun. People drifted toward cars calling good nights that sounded like "see you tomorrows." Marcus locked the shipping container like a man tucking a kid into bed. Dee packed her tins. The excavator quieted, head bowed as if satisfied with its first bite. Ethan, Victoria, and Lily lingered after the last car taillight smudged into the blue. They walked the short path to the river because that was where beginnings and endings had always made their most sense. The bend looked the same as it had the day he'd fallen to a knee and asked the first time years ago with a different ring and a different future in his hands. The cottonwoods whispered, the water carried light like a secret. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and took out the card he still carried, the purple crayon Father's Day masterpiece with the submarine fish. He held it up so it caught the last ribbon of sun. "She drew us here," he said. "Now we're drawing it back," Victoria whispered. Lily slid between them and took each of their hands. For a long minute, the three of them stood like that calloused palm to cold fingers to warm glove, watching the river write its single endless sentence. "Ready to go home?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," Lily said. "We've got homework." "Always," Victoria added, smiling. "The good kind." They walked back up the path toward the field where their footprints already wove a story into the frost, the kind that melts by noon, but sinks deeper, somewhere better. In the distance, the new frame caught the sky, a simple geometry pulling itself upright. They would pour concrete tomorrow or the next day, or whenever the weather and the state and the budget let them. They would argue about paint. They would hang nets and shelve books and argue again. They would lose some fights and win others. They would learn the patience of communities and the impatience of kids who wanted the court now. They would keep what mattered and build what they'd been missing, together. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.